Chapter 76. The day had come for the hunter exam, and Haruto led his small, elite group from the palace. 1,000 men from his kingdom were also set to take the exam, but they would have to find their own way. The search for the location was part of the challenge, after all. Under Haruto's directive, the men dispersed in small groups, left to their own devices. His party consisted of Canary, who had discovered the exam location in record time, Phaeton and Finks, who were more like brothers than advisors, and Killua, trailing quietly at the back. In a bid to avoid leading others to the hidden location, they went discreetly, eventually arriving at an inconspicuous dining establishment. "Welcome. What can I get you?" the chef greeted as they stepped in. Haruto tilted his head subtly toward Killua, cueing him to speak. "The steak meal," said Killua. The chef's eyes narrowed. "How would you like it cooked?" Slowly, over a weak fire, Killua responded, eyes meeting the chef's in mutual understanding. "It's coming right up," the chef said. A waitress gestured for them to follow her to a side door. As they entered a private room laden with dishes, the floor began to descend. Phaeton and Finks didn't wait for formalities. They dove into the food, relishing each bite as if it were a prize won in battle. Killua joined them, albeit less voraciously. Canary, however, began arranging a plate for Haruto, selecting the best morsels with a keen eye. Phaeton looked up, meeting Haruto's eyes. "Any strategy, Haruto?" "Adapt. That's the only plan we need," Haruto replied, tasting the food that Canary handed him. Finks chuckled. "That's always been your way." "It's served us well so far, has it not?" Haruto said, finally showing the barest hint of a smile. As the elevator reached the ground level, the door slid open to reveal a sprawling underground chamber, reminiscent of an expansive tunnel system. A worker approached them, carrying a set of badges. "Congratulations on being the first to arrive," he said, extending the badges toward the group. Canary picked up the badge labeled number 1 and pinned it gently onto Haruto's chest, meeting his eyes for a brief, silent exchange. She then picked up the number 2 badge for herself. Phaeton took number 3, Finks number 4, and Killua number 5. Without a word, Haruto walked to a section of the wall, where he gracefully lowered himself onto the floor. Canary followed, her eyes clouding with a mixture of concern and affection. "You should at least sit on a cushion, not the ground." Haruto chuckled lightly. "Worried about my comfort, Canary? We have faced far more challenging terrains." Finally surrendering, Canary leaned gently against his side, her gesture wordless but filled with tenderness. Phaeton and Finks settled down beside them, the tension of the pending hunter exam hanging in the air. The next few hours were quiet. Canary, Phaeton, and Finks reminisced about their early years. "I remember our first big steal. Haruto was the one who came up with the plan," Phaeton smirked. Finks chuckled. "Ah yes, we nearly got caught. But Haruto had a backup plan, like always." "You were reckless," Haruto interjected, "but you learned. Now you're the ones who come up with plans." Killua sat a bit apart, listening intently. The tales of survival and camaraderie in the unforgiving Meteor City painted a vivid picture of the kingdom's origins. The stories weren't just entertaining, they were educational. His respect for Haruto deepened, as did his understanding of the kingdom he now represented. "Killua," Haruto finally spoke, his eyes meeting the young man's. "From now on, I want you to be on your own. You represent your age group in Meteor Kingdom." Killua nodded respectfully and took his skateboard under his arm, separating himself from the group. Soon after, the chamber filled with people. Most were familiar faces, men from Haruto's army claiming badges ranging from 6 to 18. However, badge number 19 was taken by a man who didn't seem to fit in. He was portly, with an unassuming demeanor and a sheepish smile. As his gaze met Haruto's, he looked away nervously, sweat trickling down his forehead. Opting instead to approach Killua, the stranger extended a hand. "Hi, I'm Tunpa." Killua eyed him suspiciously. "Nice to meet you." Tunpa took a seat, but his eyes kept darting back to Haruto and his close-knit group. Haruto sensed the man's unease but didn't acknowledge it. His focus remained on his group, Canary, Finks, and Phaeton, 3 people who had been by his side since those early days in Meteor City. Tonpa looked over at Killua and then at the badge on his chest. "Ah, badge number 5. You must be pretty skilled to get here so early. Do you know anything about the guy with badge number 1? He asked, trying to mask his curiosity with casual interest. Killua grinned mischievously. "Oh, that guy? You really want to know?" Tonpa leaned in closer, eager for a scoop. "Absolutely. Is he as tough as he looks?" "Well," Killua began, letting the suspense hang in the air for a moment, "he's not just tough. The stories say he's a man-eater, literally. Eats the hearts of his enemies to gain their power." Tonpa's eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and intrigue flooding his face. "Really? Eats hearts?" Killua nodded, keeping his expression serious. "They say he once walked into an enemy camp alone, tore it apart, and then had a hearty meal. If you know what I mean." Tonpa looked aghast, glancing nervously at Haruto, who was engaged in quiet conversation with his comrades. "Wow, that's something. He doesn't look the part." "Appearances can be deceiving," Killua shrugged, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Tonpa hesitated, then decided to switch gears. "What about you? What's your story?" "I'm just here for the experience," Killua said, leaning back and tossing his skateboard into the air, catching it effortlessly. "I've heard the hunter exam is challenging. Should be fun." "You call something that attracts man-eating psychopaths fun?" Killua chuckled. "Well, life's boring without a little danger, isn't it?" Chapter 77. Tonpa was so engrossed in the story that he didn't notice Killua casually drinking 10 of his infamous laxative-laced beverages. Making a hasty excuse, Tonpa left to continue his habitual rookie crushing elsewhere. Killua grinned as he watched a flamboyant clown-like man walk into the chamber. It was Hisoka. Killua remembered the time Hisoka had visited Meteor City, challenging Haruto only to be unceremoniously dismissed. Hisoka had since played a role in Killua's initiation at Heaven's Arena. As Killua studied Hisoka, the man's gaze was fixed on Haruto. There was a strange gleam in Hisoka's eyes, a bizarre mixture of anticipation and frustration. He had been hungering for a rematch since the day Haruto had effortlessly dismantled his schemes. Phaeton glanced at Killua, then at Hisoka. "Looks like we have an intriguing guest." Haruto spoke without turning his head. "Let him intrigue himself. He's not worth our concern." A new tension filled the room as more applicants filed in, clutching their badges. Yet Haruto and his crew remained a steady, unaffected force. To them, this was but a prelude. The real symphony had yet to start. After a few more hours, the chamber was teeming with applicants. Finally, a man sporting a mustache but lacking a mouth stepped forward. He rang a peculiar bell and announced, "This concludes registration. The hunter exam is about to commence." The mustached man gestured toward a seemingly endless tunnel behind him. "If you value your lives, this is your last chance to leave. This exam will be lethal." A murmur ran through the crowd, but no one moved. "Very well," the man said, beginning to walk briskly into the tunnel. "Your first task is to follow me. I can't tell you the destination or how long it will take to get there." As they began to follow, the 1,000 men from Haruto's kingdom activated chest-mounted cameras, streaming the event live. Pakunoda, waiting outside, relayed the feed to exclusive channels in the Meteor Kingdom. Phaeton turned to Haruto. "What do you think about this first task? It seems almost too straightforward." "A test of endurance, perhaps," Haruto replied, eyes fixed ahead. "But it's not the task that matters, it's the purpose behind it." "This stage will eliminate the most," Finks said. "It's designed to wear people down, mentally and physically." As Killua effortlessly skated ahead, he heard a voice from behind him. "Hey, kid, that's not fair. That's cheating." He didn't bother looking back. Yet another voice chimed in, this one lighter and seemingly younger. "Not really. The examiner said to follow him, not to run behind him." Killua finally turned his gaze to the speaker, a green-haired kid who appeared no older than him. "How old are you?" Killua asked. 12, the kid replied. "Same here," Killua said, hopping off his skateboard and picking it up. "I'm Killua. You?" "Gone," the boy answered with a cheerful grin. As they ran, another figure joined them. "It's been a while, Killua," the newcomer said, his red eyes hidden behind a pair of unique contact lenses. "One. Kurapika," Killua responded. "I heard you came with the rest of the kingdom's crew." Kurapika nodded. "I did, but I'm running solo, like you. Grandfather wanted me to learn on my own." Killua casually introduced Kurapika to Gon, and Gon, in turn, introduced the doctor-in-training Meteor to both. The four youngsters ran side by side, chatting and sizing each other up, as they put kilometer after kilometer behind them. After hours of running through the tunnel, the excitement of the broadcast had long worn thin for many viewers. People worldwide who had tuned in found it monotonous to watch 1,000 men simply run. Yet, when the first candidate, a chubby boy puffing and red-faced, finally collapsed, the thrill was reignited. Texts, calls, and messages flew as viewers alerted their friends. Things were finally getting interesting. As they approached an expansive stairway that spiraled upwards, the mustached examiner turned back to the candidates. "I'll pick up the pace now," he announced before ascending with surprising speed. Despite the increased tempo, most of the candidates managed to keep up. Yet, by the time they reached the top, 37 more had been eliminated. The total toll now stood at 38, but Haruto's group remained unaffected. Haruto, Canary, Phaeton, and Finks looked as if they had just taken a leisurely walk. Not a bead of sweat was visible on any of them. As they reached the end of the tunnel system, the mustached examiner announced the second part of the test. Emerging from the labyrinthine tunnel system, they found themselves in a murky swamp shrouded in mist. Before they could venture any further, a bruised and bloodied man staggered out from a clump of bushes. As the group stepped into the mist-covered swamp, a haggard figure stumbled out of the bushes, panting heavily. "Wait! That's not the examiner," he cried, pointing at the mustached examiner. "He's an imposter, a monster trying to lead you all to your deaths." To emphasize his point, the man dragged forth a lifeless creature that bore an uncanny resemblance to the examiner. "I've killed many of these things already." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, with some candidates visibly unnerved. Haruto, however, merely glanced at the man and turned away without a word, signaling his group to follow. Hisoka was less merciful. 4 playing cards materialized in his hands and flew towards the 2 targets, the injured man and citizens. The examiner deftly caught all 4 cards. The injured man, however, met a gruesome end as the card sliced through his face and lodged deep into his skull. "A real examiner wouldn't die so easily," Hisoka said, pleased with himself. True to his words, the dead creature beside the fallen man twitched, then sprang up and scurried away into the foliage. Citizens caught Hisoka's eyes. "Don't ever attack an examiner again, or you'll be disqualified," he warned. As if on cue, a flurry of birds swooped down from the treetops, feasting on the lifeless body of the man Hisoka had just killed. "Those creatures," Siddhas gestured at the retreating figure of the imposter, "aim to lead you astray and kill you. Some of you suspected me earlier, didn't you? Clever, but not clever enough." Siddhas turned and plunged deeper into the marsh, prompting the candidates to follow. Haruto signaled his comrades, Phaeton, Finks, and Canary, to keep close. Killua, young and sprightly, was close to them with Kurapika, Gon, and Leorio. As the group plunged deeper into the swamp, the treacherous landscape seemed almost eager to reveal its hidden menaces. The mist hung low, obscuring the vision of everyone but the most perceptive. "Stay close," Haruto commanded, not a hint of concern in his voice. Phaeton, Finks, and Canary naturally congregated around him. Chapter 78. Siddhas led the way, but candidates in the rear started to drop. A high-pitched voice rang out, mimicking a human cry for help, "Danger ahead. Go this way." One candidate veered off the main path, his face flushed with gratitude for the supposed warning. Seconds later, a gurgling scream filled the air. A predatory bird swooped down and started to peck at the remains. Haruto and his comrades never glanced back. Ahead, a series of colorful fruits glistened on the back of a turtle-like creature submerged in the water. Two candidates eagerly approached to pick the fruits. As they leaned in, the creature snapped, jaws closing in a violent grip. Their screams were brief. "Amateur mistakes," Phaeton muttered. Suddenly, the ground beneath a candidate erupted as a giant frog leapt from its hiding place. The frog's jaws clamped around the man, swallowing him whole before diving back into the marsh. A candidate to their left kicked a mushroom, which promptly exploded into a cloud of spores. The spores entered through his mouth and nose, and within moments, the man collapsed, convulsing as seedlings started to sprout from his body. Nearby, a group of beautiful butterflies descended upon another candidate, who sighed as if entranced by their beauty. He soon fell asleep, never to awaken again as the butterflies began their gruesome feast. "Let them weed themselves out," Finks commented, pulling a blade from his coat. "Makes it easier for us." As they pressed further into the swamp, Phaeton noticed Killaw's group lagging behind. His eyes flicked to Hisoka, who was hovering close to them. Before he could move, Haruto's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Let him take care of himself. He is not here to sightsee." Phaeton met Haruto's gaze and gave a curt nod. He knew Hisoka wouldn't dare mess with them, especially not with Haruto present. Gon and Leorio seemed to be the objects of Hisoka's idle amusement, but Killua and Kurapika were left alone, perhaps because they hailed from Meteor Kingdom. Finally, the candidates emerged from the treacherous swamp into a clearing with a single building. As they approached, the door swung open to reveal an elderly man. It was Netero, standing with an amiable smile, but the eye said it all. His gaze settled on Haruto. "Welcome, candidates. This exam isn't over yet," Netero announced, locking eyes with Haruto for an extended moment. Just a few days ago, Haruto had been the honored guest at a grand feast thrown by King Tenoshi of the Kukonya Kingdom. He arrived at the kingdom with a massive entourage of 1,000 men, each eager to participate in the Hunter exam. While Haruto and Netero only exchanged a few words during the feast, the tension was palpable. Both men knew that Haruto's show of force was a bold challenge to the authority of the Hunter Association. Now, as they faced each other in the clearing, Netero couldn't help but remind Haruto, albeit subtly, that the association was not to be trifled with. The clearing. The elder then motioned to the colossal labyrinth behind him, its dark entrances gaping like the mouths of ancient beasts. "Welcome to the labyrinth stage of the Hunter exam," Netero began. "The task is simple, yet deceptive. Find an exit within 48 hours. 30 exits are hidden throughout, each allowing only one passage. Once utilized, the exit will close permanently. You'll be given a 10-minute countdown upon finding a door. Use it, or lose it." Haruto's eyes narrowed slightly. This was a test of attrition, designed to whittle down the numbers. His eyes met Netero's, and he saw the faintest glint of challenge there. The old man knew Haruto had come with 1,000 men, and this stage was a perfect trap to eliminate most of them, thereby sending a resounding message: don't challenge the Hunter Association. "This labyrinth isn't just a maze, it's a death trap," Netero continued. "Creatures, traps, puzzles, riddles, you'll find them all. Your wits are as crucial as your combat skills here." "Are there any questions?" Netero asked, though the unspoken challenge hanging in the air made it clear that this was less an inquiry and more a finality. The candidates were silent. Then, Netero clapped his hands, and they found themselves teleported to different sections of the labyrinth. Haruto looked around. He was alone in a dimly lit corridor that forked in 3 directions. Haruto assessed the dimly lit corridor before him, eyes darting between the 3 separate paths that loomed ahead. He reached for the communicator, already knowing it would be futile. As expected, it was dead. Netero might have thought that isolating them would weaken their resolve, but Haruto was 2 steps ahead. Every person under his command had been trained in the secondary Hatsu known as Ant King's pheromones. Developed by Haruto himself, This specialized technique allowed for a form of silent communication through NEN signatures. These signatures could only be decoded by those trained in the same technique. Yumiko, the hive harmonizer who had been instrumental in Meteor Kingdom's rise, had connected the minds of Haruto's men to teach them this unique skill. Haruto released a pulse of his aura, subtle but precisely modulated. He didn't need to say a word, his intentions traveled silently through the network of NEN signatures that his men had been trained to recognize. Moments later, Canary, Finks, and Phaeton materialized beside him, navigating through the labyrinthine maze with ease. 3 paths. Any preferences? Phaeton looked at the branching corridors before them. The one that challenges us most, Haruto said, a half-smile crossing his face. Phaeton chuckled. Of course. They chose the middle path, its darkness looking just a bit more ominous than the others. They walked in single file, Haruto leading the way. The corridor twisted and turned, its walls lined with carvings that shifted and distorted as they moved. Suddenly, a wall of flames erupted before them, blocking their way forward. So, it begins, Finks said, unsheathing a blade. Stand back, Haruto ordered, his voice tinged with a sense of finality. Without a gesture or incantation, the flames parted before him. They reformed behind him as the group advanced, as if bowing to his unspoken command. Finks shared a knowing glance with Phaeton but said nothing. There was no need. Chapter 79. After the wall of flames subsided and the group advanced, they found themselves facing a large chamber with a circular pattern on the floor, which was comprised of tiles with various symbols, animals, geometric shapes, celestial objects, and elements. In the center of the chamber was a stone pedestal with an inscription. The way forward opens only to those who comprehend nature's truths, Canary read aloud. Haruto hummed, studying the tiles with detached interest. Finks approached the pedestal, examining the intricate patterns that surrounded the inscription. Seems like we need to find the correct sequence to unlock the path ahead. Then let's not waste any more time, Phaeton chimed in, cracking his knuckles. Canary, Phaeton, and Finks began experimenting with different sequences of tiles, guided by the symbols and a basic understanding of nature's relationships. Fire and water, earth and sky, predator and prey, they attempted to find the logic behind the riddle, stepping on tiles in various combinations. Nothing happened. After several minutes, Haruto broke the silence. You're making it too complicated. Nature has its own elegance and simplicity. He stepped forward and walked in a spiral starting from the sun tile, moving outward through tiles representing air, water, plants, animals, and finally ending on the moon. As his foot landed on the final tile, the entire floor glowed, and a path ahead became visible, revealing a door. Simple, yet profound. That's the essence of nature, Haruto stated as he walked through the newly opened doorway, not even sparing a glance back. His comrades followed, their faces a mix of admiration and relief. The door led them to another chamber, this one filled with mirrors that covered every inch of the walls, floor, and ceiling. Dotted between the mirrors were large, grotesque statues. As soon as they entered, the door behind them closed and vanished. Mirrors and illusions. It's like walking inside someone's nightmare, Phaeton said, gripping his blade more tightly. Finks stepped forward, carefully avoiding the statues. Stay in the middle. These statues might not be just decorations. No sooner had he spoken than the statues came to life, lunging at them. Haruto lifted his hand in a dismissive gesture. The statues froze and crumbled to dust. He then focused his gaze on one mirror in particular. The reflection staring back was not his but rather an ever-changing array of faces. "Break it," he commanded. Phaeton hurled his blade at the identified mirror. It shattered, and the room instantly reverted to a state of normalcy, a door appearing on the far side. "Deceptive but ultimately futile traps," Haruto commented as they moved on. The next room appeared empty, but as they took their first steps inside, their feet sank into the floor. It wasn't a floor at all but a giant marsh, covered by a thin layer of deceptive material. "The swamp wasn't enough, now we've got quicksand," Phaeton groaned. In the marsh-like chamber, Finks sighed as the floor beneath him gave way, sucking him deeper into the muck. He attempted to pull his leg free but realized the quicksand's grip was unyielding. The ground around them continued to dip, and Phaeton also found himself sinking. Haruto watched, almost bemused. Keep moving. The quicksand's viscosity will be affected by movement. As if in defiance of the laws that bound the marsh, Haruto calmly treaded over the sinking ground to a raised platform at the center of the room. His steps seemed to barely touch the surface, as if the quicksand knew better than to challenge him. Canary, Phaeton, and Finks moved as advised, their steps calculated and controlled. By maintaining constant motion, they managed to reach the platform where Haruto stood. Once they were safe, a rumbling sound echoed through the chamber, and the quicksand solidified into a firm path leading to another door. Finks chuckled. Well, that's one way to cross a swamp. Canary smiled for a moment but caught herself and returned to her composed stance. It seems we're not out of this yet. Haruto led them through the door, entering a hall adorned with intricate tapestries depicting various battles and mythological events. What caught their attention was the ceiling, which was formed of concentric circles, each one filled with a pattern of star constellations. Directly beneath was a circular platform, inscribed with markings resembling a celestial calendar. The heavens themselves, Phaeton noted, squinting at the constellations. Interesting. Haruto placed his hand on the platform. Time for us to move the heavens, then. Using his impeccable knowledge of celestial mechanics, acquired not out of necessity but as a tribute to the grandeur of the universe, Haruto began rotating the dials to align with the current celestial configuration. The ceiling responded, the constellations shifting into their corresponding positions. With a click, the platform sank into the ground, revealing a downward spiral staircase. Another door won't do, Haruto commented dryly. Down we go. The staircase descended into a cavernous chamber illuminated only by bioluminescent fungi. In the middle of the room was an intricate mosaic depicting a giant serpent coiled around a tree, its mouth open wide, displaying sharp, crystalline fangs. Each fang seemed to be an actual crystal embedded into the mosaic. Perhaps a serpent guarding the tree of life, Finks hypothesized. Haruto walked over to the mosaic and looked closely at one of the fangs. He reached down and effortlessly plucked it from its setting. The moment he did, the room darkened, and the bioluminescent fungi dimmed. A hissing sound emanated from the walls as multiple slits opened, and real snakes slithered out. Ah, guardians, Haruto said, not a trace of concern in his voice. Canary and Finks readied their weapons. Phaeton took a step back, providing room for Haruto to maneuver. But Haruto simply looked at the incoming swarm of snakes and then back at the fang he held. With a swift movement, he reinserted the fang into the mosaic. As though recognizing their master's will, the snakes retreated, slithering back into the walls, and the bioluminescent fungi regained their glow. Respect must be paid, even to guardians who have forgotten their place, Haruto stated as a passageway opened opposite the mosaic. Chapter 80. They proceeded through it and finally arrived at a grand hall, surprisingly well lit and decorated with statues of various mythical beings. At the far end was another door, this one more ornate than any they had seen before, embellished with golden filigree and intricate carvings. As they reached the door, a timer appeared, counting down from 10 minutes. Haruto looked at the digital numbers and then sat down in front of the door. Let's wait for a while, he said. His companions exchanged glances but said nothing, following his lead and sitting down as well. Meanwhile, on another part of the maze, Killua found himself navigating through twisted corridors with hidden traps. Like Haruto had said, he wasn't looking for help, he wanted to challenge this exam on his own. He disarmed a series of pressure plates with ease, only to find himself facing a chamber filled with thick mist and a series of suspended platforms. Stepping onto the first platform caused the rest to flicker in and out of visibility. Visibility or intuition? Fine, let's play, he murmured. He jumped from platform to platform, each materializing only a second before his foot landed. As he made it to the other side and proceeded, he felt a familiar presence. Gon was ahead, seemingly stuck at a puzzle featuring spinning wheels with symbols on them. "Need a hand?" Killua asked, smirking. "No," Gon grinned, "I've almost got it." Killua waited. A few moments later, Gon let out a triumphant cheer. The spinning wheels clicked into place, opening a new path. The two friends continued through the maze, soon stumbling upon Kurapika, who was engrossed in decoding a wall of ancient text. "This one's more to your taste, isn't it?" Killua quipped. "It is. The text is actually a list of conditions. Satisfy them and the door will open," Kurapika explained. A moment later, he pressed a series of symbols, and the door in front of them slid open. The three of them moved forward and soon found the Oreo, who was awkwardly balancing on one leg while trying to retrieve a key hanging from the ceiling. "Really, man? You're a doctor, not an acrobat," Killua said, leaping effortlessly to grab the key and unlock the door. From then on, the four friends worked together to solve their riddles and face the obstacles of the labyrinthine maze. Gon, Killua, Kurapika, and Leorio entered a room where the walls were filled with different colored tiles, each inscribed with an abstract shape. "Okay, how do we solve this one?" Leorio asked, scratching his head. "Maybe it's a pattern or sequence," Kurapika suggested. Killua grinned. "Only one way to find out." He pressed a blue tile. The room rumbled, but nothing happened. "Maybe not that one." Gon stepped forward and pressed a green tile. A rumbling noise filled the room, and a few tiles sunk into the walls, revealing arrows. He ducked just in time as arrows shot out. "Watch out!" Gon warned. "This room fights back." Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. Four newcomers entered the room, eyeing the group maliciously. "Looks like we got competition," one of them sneered. "But this room ain't big enough for all of us." Leorio clenched his fists. "I have a feeling you guys aren't here to play nice." "Observant," the intruder replied, lunging at Leorio with a small knife. Kurapika blocked the attack with his buken, and Killua swiftly disarmed another attacker with a well-aimed kick. Gon, not willing to resort to violence unless absolutely necessary, focused on the puzzle. He noticed that the tiles had shapes resembling natural elements: water, fire, earth, and air. He pressed them in what he felt was a logical sequence: fire, air, water, earth. The room shuddered, and this time, a door opened on the far side. "We've got it! Come on," Gon shouted. Kurapika used his weapon to trip another attacker, giving them enough time to dash through the door. It slammed shut behind them, separating them from their attackers. The next room was a large open space with what seemed like an endless pit in the middle. Around the edge were stone pedestals with buttons. "Do we press them?" Leorio wondered, eyeing the buttons cautiously. "No time like the present," Killua said, pressing one. A plank extended from one side of the room to a platform on the opposite side. But as he stepped on it, it started to wobble dangerously. "Stable, this is not," Killua said, balancing precariously. Kurapika examined another pedestal. "They have different symbols. This one has a feather on it, maybe it means it's lighter?" Gon pushed the button with the feather symbol. Another plank extended, and as Killua tested it, this one remained stable. "One by one, let's go," Kurapika said. Carefully, they all crossed the plank to the other side. Once they were across, the plank withdrew into the wall, and another door opened. The friends found themselves in a forest-like environment. Tall trees with luminescent leaves surrounded them, and the atmosphere was filled with an eerie mist. "Looks almost magical," Leorio said. "Yeah, too magical," Killua responded, squinting at the trees. "Watch out for those branches." As if on cue, the tree branches began to move, reaching out for them like tentacles. Gon grabbed a branch and used it to vault himself out of reach. Killua dodged and weaved, avoiding the branches skillfully. Kurapika used his buken to latch onto a tree and pull himself upward, and Leorio simply ducked and covered. "Run, just run," Gon yelled, sprinting toward what he hoped was the way out. The others followed suit, dodging the increasingly aggressive branches. Finally, they reached another door, this one carved with tree-like motifs. Kurapika pressed against it, and it creaked open. Once they were through, they found themselves in a calm, well-lit hallway, catching their breath. "That was intense," Leorio said, panting. Kurapika nodded. "Indeed. But we managed, and that's what counts." Gon grinned. "Right. So, what's next?" Chapter 81. On the other side, Haruto rose from his seated position as the timer counted down to its last moments. He stepped through the door, glancing briefly behind him. None of his men had arrived. A fleeting thought passed through his mind: had they allied themselves with other doors? He would find out later whether his planning or Netero's cunning had prevailed. As Haruto walked into the room, he caught sight of Netero, Nav, and Satots enjoying a meal, prepared by a woman with vibrant green hair and a hulking man. Unfazed by the formal setting, Haruto moved to the far end of the room and gracefully lowered himself to the floor, his team following suit. He offered the table no second glance. The vacant chairs seemed to him like a facade, vehicles for empty gestures and shallow conversations that he had little patience for. Despite being a king of a nation, Haruto had little regard for the posturing and formalities that others expected of him. He simply didn't find any inherent value in abiding by rules that he found meaningless. A few hours later, Hisoka sauntered into the room, his lips curling into a grin as his eyes met Haruto's. Without uttering a word, he took a seat at the table, directly opposite Netero, who was observing everyone with a kind of detached interest. Not long after, the door swung open again, and Killua entered, Gon, Leorio, and Kurapika in tow. Although Killua recognized the formidable air that Haruto effortlessly exuded, he wasn't swayed by it. He navigated his way to Haruto and greeted him. "Your Highness, it seems we've all made it," Killua said respectfully, keeping his tone neutral. Haruto glanced up from his seated position. "I see you've arrived as well," he responded, eyes returning to meet Killua's briefly before disengaging. "Who are they?" Phaeton whispered to Haruto, eyeing Gon and Leorio. Killua gritted his teeth as Phaeton playfully ruffled his hair. "Quit it," he said, swatting Phaeton's hand away. "Let me introduce you. This is Gon, and that's Leorio." Phaeton glanced at Gon and Leorio, offering them nothing more than a slight nod. Haruto remained seated, his attention seemingly focused elsewhere, but his presence was felt by everyone in the room. It was as if the air around him had a weight, a silent resonance that demanded respect without asking for it. As Killua exchanged brief words with his friends, Haruto's men began to flood the room. One after another, from every door, they entered, always in groups of more than 100. Their movements were so synchronized that it seemed they had never been separated at all. Like a swarm, they flowed into the chamber and took their positions near Haruto. Netero, watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but feel the futility of his earlier planning. His aim had been to thin the ranks of Haruto's men through the labyrinthine trials, but that hope was quickly evaporating. A plan for a series of one-on-one battles flitted through his mind, but he dismissed it. To openly target Haruto in such a way would be to acknowledge his influence, something Netero was loath to do. As the last group of Haruto's men filed into the room, Phaeton leaned toward Haruto and murmured, "You said we'd gather again. It seems you were right." Haruto glanced at him but did not respond. His silence was not dismissive but seemed to contain within it an acknowledgement, a validation that words couldn't capture. Finally, Netero stood up from his seat. "It appears everyone has arrived. I believe it's time we get to the reason we're all here." His eyes flitted across the room, pausing for an almost imperceptible moment on Haruto. "In a few moments, the next phase of the exam will begin," Netero continued, "and I assure you, it will challenge each and every one of you in ways you cannot imagine." Killua felt a tinge of excitement but suppressed it quickly, not wanting to betray any emotion in front of Haruto and his men. Gon, ever eager, grinned at the prospect, while Leorio seemed to mumble something about less dangerous ways to get a medical license. Haruto slowly stood, stretching his arms as he did so. As he walked past Netero, their eyes locked for a fraction of a second, but that was enough. Both men understood, whatever games had been played so far were now over. The real contest was about to begin. Netero cleared his throat. The next phase of the Hunter exam will take place at that structure. He gestured toward a towering hourglass in the distance. It's called the Hourglass of Destiny. Each grain of sand that flows represents a moment in time. You have 1 hour until the sand runs out, and when it does, the temporal gates at the base will open for exactly 1 minute. Only one of you can pass through each gate during that time. You start from here, and it'll be a close call even at full sprint. Tamper with the hourglass, and your entire group is disqualified. As Netero spoke, Haruto leaned back slightly, taking in the hourglass without moving a muscle on his face. He seemed already to have calculated the timing, the distance, and the strategy, all in the time it took Netero to explain the rules. Phaeton glanced at Haruto and smirked. "Your thoughts?" Haruto's eyes flickered, but he remained silent. The room felt his quiet assent that the challenge was acceptable, and perhaps even intriguing. Gon couldn't contain his excitement. "Wow, this sounds like fun." Leorio shook his head. "Fun? This is a crazy way to get a license." Netero clapped his hands. "Enough chatter. To your positions." The participants dispersed, finding their spots at the starting line some distance away from the hourglass. Haruto's men positioned themselves around him, as if gravitating towards their center of mass. The air felt tense, electric, ready to snap. Yet Haruto remained unfazed, his eyes briefly meeting Phaeton's. Netero raised his arm. "Let the Hourglass of Destiny challenge begin." Chapter 82. The group broke into a sprint the moment Netero's arm swung down. Gon and Killua took the lead, their young legs full of vigor. Leorio was behind them, panting already but determined. Haruto moved at a steady, unhurried pace, his strides deliberate, his men following suit. His pace seemed almost leisurely, but those who watched closely noticed that he was covering ground efficiently. It was as if the world moved at his pace, not the other way around. The sand trickled down, the bottom chamber of the hourglass gradually filling. Each grain counted down the seconds until the gates would open. The tension was palpable. Phaeton, running next to Haruto, broke the silence. "If the gates allow only one at a time, how will so many of our men will pass?" Haruto analyzed the stage and Netero's words with a cool detachment. While his pace never wavered, his mind worked at full speed. Netero wanted to use the temporal gates to limit the number of participants that could pass, obviously targeting his sizable entourage. He knew Netero's objective was to whittle down the ranks of his 1,000 Nen masters. The act of bringing so many was a challenge to the Hunter Association itself. The test was a game of numbers. At most, 60 participants could pass through the temporal gates during the 1-minute interval. With his massive army, they'd need more than 16 hours to get everyone through. That wasn't Netero's intention. It was more a tactical play to thin the ranks. But he didn't mention the sand, Haruto mused internally. There had been explicit rules about not tampering with the mechanism of the hourglass, but the sand within was fair game. The trick would be to manipulate it without touching the hourglass itself. A cunning loophole, and precisely the sort of thing he'd expect from a man like Netero. Haruto called Canary, Phaeton, and Finks close to himself as they continued their steady pace towards the Hourglass of Destiny. "Canary, Phaeton, Finks, listen carefully. Is it time for a plan?" Phaeton asked, with a light tone that barely concealed his anticipation. "Indeed. I've noticed a loophole in Netero's little game with the hourglass. The rules say we can't tamper with the hourglass mechanism, but he didn't say anything about the sand." "Interesting," Finks mused. "What's the play?" Haruto continued, "We'll use our Nen manipulation abilities to control the sand's flow. The objective isn't to halt it, but to synchronize it." "Synchronize?" Canary inquired. "Correct. We'll slow down a few grains of sand from the top chamber while speeding up others coming from the bottom. The goal is for the last grain in the top to drop at the exact moment the first grain reaches the top chamber from below. They should meet in the middle. Phaeton grinned. You're saying we keep a continuous flow. The gates will open but won't close. That's the plan. It should allow everyone to pass through. Finks looked at Haruto, approving but not surprised. A crafty plan. Fits well into the rules yet bends them in our favor. Execute it discreetly, Haruto instructed. Even if Netero is perceptive, let's not make it easy for him to figure out what we're doing. They all nodded, breaking from the huddle and returning to their previous formation. As they ran, a group of Haruto's Nen masters moved ahead, concentrating on their Nen manipulation techniques. Invisible threads of aura extended from their hands, reaching the sand within the hourglass. Some slowed the descending grains, while others accelerated those at the bottom, aiming for that precise meeting point in the middle of the glass structure. Phaeton glanced at Haruto. It's happening. The grains are almost synced. Good, was all Haruto said. But that one word was enough, a silent stamp of approval and a subtle encouragement for his men to continue. Netero, at the front, sensed the change in aura. He narrowed his eyes but said nothing, allowing the game to unfold. Whether he was aware of the scheme or not, he let no sign of it show. As they neared the hourglass, Haruto could see the sand grains meeting in the middle, their paths crossing in a beautiful display of precision and control. Just as he had anticipated, the last grain fell from the top chamber right as the first grain reached the top from below. The gates creaked open. It worked, Canary whispered, her voice tinged with awe and satisfaction. Of course it did, Haruto responded, his voice as calm as still water. The moment they had all waited for arrived. Haruto led his men into the temporal gates, each passing through in an organized and practiced manner, as if they had been doing it for years. Gon turned to Killua as they also approached the gates. Hey, look! Everyone's going through. How did that happen? Killua watched Haruto and his men, their movements so fluid and assured. He must have found a way to bend the rules. But let's focus, our turn's coming up. Leorio, panting heavily, caught up. Are we not going to discuss how he just did that? Later, Killua snapped. For now, let's pass this phase. As Haruto stepped through the gate, his eyes locked briefly with Netero's. No words were needed. The air crackled with the intensity of two formidable opponents acknowledging each other's strength. Haruto looked back one last time to make sure all of his men had made it through. Once assured, his gaze returned to the path ahead. Netero sighed and then erupted into laughter, watching the events unfold from a distance. Nav, standing next to him, looked puzzled. Why don't you just eliminate them with one-on-one fights? Netero grinned. Eliminating them that way would tarnish the reputation of the Hunter Association. We want to partner with them, not alienate them. Besides, the rules don't prohibit a kingdom from sending 1,000 men for the exam. Nav raised an eyebrow but then realized what really lay behind Netero's reasoning. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Netero's eyes twinkled. Oh, immensely so. This young king of the Meteor Kingdom keeps outsmarting me, and I find it refreshing. Chapter 83. Netero then gestured grandly toward the enormous structure that had materialized in the middle of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the chessboard arena. The chessboard arena was an imposing spectacle, towering above everyone in the room. Constructed of a gleaming obsidian, each square was marked with intricate, glowing runes. Suspended orbs of ethereal light floated above, casting an otherworldly glow that reflected off the polished surface. It was as if they were about to participate in a sacred ritual, a celestial battleground suspended in a void. The arena was a towering 3D chessboard, with squares extending in 3 dimensions. 4 glowing safe squares marked the corners of the arena. Netero explained the rules, the objective, the mechanics of movement, the intricacies of combat, the stalemate clause, and finally, the time limit. Netero then added, should 2 participants land on the same square, a brief duel will ensue to determine who gets to stay. Unnecessary confrontations will be penalized, so choose your battles wisely. Phaeton glanced at Haruto, who merely nodded. Instructions had already been disseminated through his Ant King's pheromones technique. His men were ready. As for the combat, it's not about knocking your opponent out. It's about strategy, Netero emphasized. You have to make the right moves to reach your safe square while considering time and the dynamics of the arena. Understood, Haruto said, his voice tinged with approval for the well-crafted challenge. Netero grinned. Very well. To your positions. Participants teleported to opposite corners of the chessboard. Gon and Killua found themselves positioned near each other. Leorio was a bit farther away, trying to calculate how many squares he'd need to cross to reach a safe square. Gon's eyes widened as he took in the enormity of the arena, his heart pounding with excitement. This was a playground for strategy, a maze for warriors. Killua, standing not too far from him, eyed the structure critically. Suspicion played at the corners of his mind as he watched Haruto and his men. Leorio looked overwhelmed, scratching his head as he muttered calculations under his breath. Haruto and his men were well distributed throughout the arena, each aware of the choreography they would engage in upon encountering each other. The match started, and Haruto immediately initiated his choreographed moves with his nearby subordinates. To an observer like Netero, it appeared as if they were in a balanced combat dance, neither giving an inch. But they were actually following Haruto's pre-planned strategy, avoiding the potential for stalemate while subtly advancing toward their safe squares. Inside, Haruto savored the ticking of the invisible clock. Each second that passed was a testament to his strategy unfurling like clockwork. Yet, as he glanced toward Netero, he couldn't shake off the elder's penetrating gaze. It was a challenge and a mystery all rolled into one. Haruto's moves weren't rushed, they were deliberate, orchestrated to make efficient use of time without drawing suspicion. His men seamlessly flowed from one square to another, respecting the choreography that would lead them to their destination. Gon and Killua tried to figure out their own strategies, watching Haruto and his men warily from a distance. Gon was thrilled by the complexity, but Killua couldn't shake off the sense that Haruto's men were up to something. Leorio was sweating bullets but managed to move steadily toward his corner, avoiding any direct confrontation. This is absurd, utterly absurd, he mumbled to himself, as he plotted his moves carefully. His heart raced as he narrowly dodged an opponent lunging at him from a diagonal square. The near miss rattled him, but he took a deep breath and pressed on. Too close, way too close, he thought, reaffirming his resolve to reach the safe square. The time limit neared its end, and several of Haruto's men began stepping onto the safe squares, their choreography complete. It was a quiet victory, one that didn't disturb the ongoing matches but was significant in its subtlety. Netero watched intently, sensing but not fully comprehending the depth of Haruto's strategy. He respected it, nonetheless, intrigued by the young king who continued to challenge his expectations. Finally, Haruto himself stepped onto a safe square, just as the last second ticked away. His men, spread across the safe squares, signaled their completion with discreet nods. They'd succeeded, every last one of them. Killua, Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio also managed to reach their respective safe squares, each in their own way. After Chairman Netero declared the end of the Hunter exam, the atmosphere in the room became palpable with relief, joy, and a sense of accomplishment. Netero stood at the podium, his face crinkling into a warm, genuine smile. Congratulations, everyone. You've passed the Hunter exam, one of the most grueling tests of ability, character, and skill. Each of you has proven your mettle, and I'm honored to welcome you into the fold as official hunters, Netero announced, applauding along with the other examiners and staff. But remember, this is only the beginning, he continued, his tone turning more serious. Being a hunter carries with it not just privileges, but also responsibilities and expectations. You are now part of an elite group, tasked with exploring the unknown, uncovering hidden treasures, hunting down criminals, and many other missions that serve humanity and extend the boundaries of human knowledge. As he spoke, a screen behind him displayed slides illustrating the various duties and roles hunters might find themselves in, archaeological digs uncovering lost civilizations, intense battles with dangerous criminals, exploration missions into uncharted territories, and more. "And now," Netero said, "let's talk about this." He held up a sleek, holographic card, shimmering with an array of colors. "This is your hunter card. Treat it with the utmost care and respect. This card is not just your ID, it is a tool and a key. It grants you access to resources ordinary people can't dream of, restricted areas, classified information, and even lines of credit. Lose it, and you lose more than just a piece of plastic. You'll lose a significant part of your abilities to operate as a hunter." He paused to let the gravity of his words sink in. "However, I urge you not to misuse this power. With great power comes great responsibility. The Hunter Association trusts you to use your privileges wisely and ethically. Violation of our code can lead to revocation of your hunter status." Netero's eyes swept over the new hunters, his gaze penetrating yet kind. "Once again, congratulations, and welcome to the challenging, rewarding life of a hunter. I expect great things from each and every one of you." With that, the ceremony concluded, and the new hunters dispersed, each holding their hunter card as if it were a fragile treasure, which, in many ways, it was. As the new hunters dispersed, Gon turned to Killua, holding his hunter card delicately between his fingers. "This is just the start, isn't it?" he said, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Killua smirked, his own card secure in his pocket. "You have no idea," he replied, both knowing that this card was their ticket to endless adventures and challenges. Chapter 84. The atmosphere in Chairman Netero's private chamber was different from the buzz of the examination hall. The room was enveloped in an aura of subtle grandeur and wisdom, a reflection of the man who occupied it. Haruto stood silently by the door, his posture impeccable yet relaxed, a sign of innate confidence. Netero's eyes twinkled, a subtle acknowledgment of the audacity the young king had displayed. Haruto broke the silence, his tone as measured as his steps. "Chairman Netero, I trust you found the outcome of the exam satisfying?" Netero chuckled, clearly enjoying the nuance in Haruto's words. "I must admit, your strategy was a masterstroke. 1,000 Nen masters, all hunters now. You've circumvented the system quite elegantly." "Systems are meant to serve people, not constrain them," Haruto replied, unfazed. "Your association would benefit from an alliance with the Meteor Kingdom." "I presume the traditional fees are now a moot point?" "Indeed," Haruto said. "Not only is the fee waived, but the Hunter Association now owes benefits to my kingdom. I trust you'll ensure they're worth our while." Netero leaned back, clearly impressed. "Your ambition is quite unique. You already think like a ruler, unyielding and far-sighted." Haruto nodded with a subtle smile, not offering further elaboration. Netero recognized the calculated reserve and found it intriguing. This wasn't an attack on the Hunter Association's authority, it was a move in a larger game, one that Haruto was clearly well equipped to play. "Ambition recognizes ambition," Netero finally said, breaking the silence. "You're not just playing the game, you're changing the rules. Why stick to an old playbook when the game is clearly evolving?" Haruto responded, unfazed. Netero chuckled. "True. The world will be watching, Haruto. You have the resources, and now you have the leverage. I'm intrigued to see how you will use them." "As am I, Chairman," Haruto said, his eyes narrowing just a bit, not in challenge but in acknowledgement of an understanding. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Netero rose from his chair. Haruto followed suit, and they shared a firm handshake, two powerful entities recognizing the potential of an alliance, or perhaps a future competition. "Until we meet again, Chairman," Haruto said, turning to leave the chamber. "The pleasure will be mine, Haruto," Netero replied, watching as the door closed behind him. Outside the chamber, Canary, Phaeton, and Finks were waiting. The trio looked up as Haruto emerged, their faces reflecting varying degrees of curiosity and anticipation. "Well?" Phaeton inquired, his eyes sharp but devoid of any doubt. He knew whatever happened in that room was likely another piece falling into place in Haruto's grand design. "We have what we came for, and more," Haruto said. "Prepare the men and send them to Kingdom. We will return to Kukanyu Palace and will return tomorrow." Finks nodded, absorbing Haruto's command with a simple, "Understood, Haruto." He left to relay the orders, his steps purposeful and quick. As Phaeton and Canary waited next to Haruto, a small group approached them. Killua took the lead, Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio following behind. Phaeton stepped closer to Killua, ruffling his silver-white hair. "What's up, shorty?" "I'm not short, I'm young," Killua shot back, a smirk forming on his lips. "You on the other hand." Phaeton's eyes sparkled with mock menace. "Now you've done it, shorty." Killua chuckled, clearly unafraid of Phaeton's theatricality. Gon and Leorio exchanged amused glances, while Kurapika simply observed, assessing the dynamics. Killua looked at Haruto, then turned to Phaeton. "Hey, can Gon and Leorio come with us to the kingdom?" There was a hopeful note in his voice. During the short but intense hunter exam, Killua had formed a close friendship with both Gon and Leorio. Phaeton glanced at Gon and Leorio, then at Haruto. After a moment, he nodded. "Sure. We could use some new blood in Meteor Kingdom. Talent is always welcomed." Killua grinned, exchanging high fives with Gon and Leorio. Leorio especially seemed relieved. He needed significant financial support for his medical education, and the Meteor Kingdom, with its reputed benefits, offered an attractive alternative. "So, it's settled," Phaeton declared, turning to face Haruto, who gave an approving nod. Phaeton's lips twitched into a faint smile. "All right, then. You're in." Gon simply nodded, his eyes meeting Haruto's for a moment. "It's a place to start looking for my father." Killua grinned, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Sweet. Wait till you see Meteor Kingdom, guys. It's like nothing else." Phaeton looked at Haruto, who gave a small nod in acknowledgement. "You've passed the hunter exam, but there's something else you should know," Phaeton began. "Before you learn then, you won't be considered a true hunter." Killua, who was already aware of this, grinned. "Oh, you guys are in for a treat. Nen is like this amazing force, kinda like energy. We channel it in different ways. It's got techniques and stuff, and it's super useful." Leorio looked puzzled, scratching his head. "Nen? Is that like some kind of mystical mumbo-jumbo?" Killua chuckled. "Nah, it's more complicated than that. It's like a life energy you can use for different things. Once you master it, you can create your own unique ability called Hatsu." Haruto listened to the conversation, leaning against a wall. His eyes were steady, watching the dynamic but not intervening. His demeanor alone suggested his disinterest in these youthful expositions, as if already knowing about Nen was a matter of course. It wasn't disdain, more like a king surveying his subjects learning the alphabet while he pondered the complexities of philosophy and strategy. Chapter 85. Phaeton glanced at Haruto again, who gave a single nod. Hatsu is a reflection of one's soul, one's essence. It's not something to be taken lightly. Leorio grinned, rubbing his hands together. "Sounds like a challenge." Gon nodded. "I want to learn it. It might help me find my dad." "Good. That's the spirit," said Phaeton, his eyes flickering towards Haruto for just a fraction of a second. Haruto broke his silence. "You'll find that knowing Nen is more than just a skill, it's a tool, and like any tool, it can build or destroy. Choose wisely." Phaeton shot them the newcomer's side eye. "I suggest you start training as soon as possible. It's not just about having a hunter's license. It's about being capable." Haruto glanced at Canary. "They have potential. Koshiro will be their master." Canary simply nodded. No words were needed. Her actions had always spoken louder, and Haruto appreciated that. At that moment, Finks returned. "The men are en route back to Meteor Kingdom, Haruto." "Excellent," Haruto acknowledged, shifting his gaze towards the limousines that had just arrived. "Let's move. We'll continue this at the palace." The group made their way to the cars, The atmosphere a blend of anticipation and assurance. Haruto, Phaeton, Finks and Canary took a limousine. Killua, Gon, Leorio, and Kurapika found themselves together in the second vehicle. The limousine pulled away, its wheels whispering against the paved streets as they headed towards the palace given to them by the king of Kukanyu Kingdom. Inside the limo carrying the younger hunters, Gon couldn't help but ask, "Who's Koshiro?" Killua leaned back. "One of the best nen masters in Meteor Kingdom. If Haruto picked him, then you're in for some serious training." Leorio adjusted his glasses. "Nen masters, palaces, this all feels like we've been thrust into some kind of fantasy." "Or maybe," Killua grinned, "you're just finally waking up to reality." When the limousines stopped at the palace, the doors were opened by impeccably dressed staff. Haruto was the first to step out, his aura commanding even the air around him to yield. He paused to take in the grandeur of the palace, a mere temporary lodging, yet a fitting one. "Haruto," Phaeton began as he joined him, "what's next on the agenda?" "A meeting with the king of Kukanyu Kingdom. We have much to discuss, and I'd prefer not to leave loose ends." "Business before pleasure, as always." As Haruto and his entourage stepped into the palace, servants bustled around to make them comfortable. With an unspoken nod, Haruto led his group to their rooms to freshen up. The atmosphere was charged, not with tension, but with the mutual understanding of the importance of the meeting ahead. Shortly after, King Tenoshi arrived, accompanied by his own retinue. The king had arranged the banquet, an overt attempt to impress Haruto and his group. The table was laid with an array of dishes, each meticulously crafted. It was clear that Kukanyu Kingdom was no longer just interested in Meteor Kingdom's technological prowess and their advanced nen methodologies. Their respect now stemmed from recognizing Meteor Kingdom as a rising power, boasting a cadre of 1,000 hunters, a feat not easily accomplished. "Welcome, King Haruto, to my humble palace," Tenoshi greeted, gesturing toward the banquet. "The pleasure is mine," Haruto replied, taking a seat. Phaeton took the chair on Haruto's right, and Canary seated herself to his left. King Tenoshi sat across from them, his eyes briefly meeting Haruto's before quickly moving to survey the table. "You've done quite well for your kingdom, King Haruto. 1,000 hunters pledged to a single ruler is no small feat." Tenoshi leaned in, "A feast fitting for a king, don't you think?" Tenoshi ventured, trying to gauge Haruto's reaction. Haruto simply nodded at King Tenoshi's words, offering no additional commentary. King Tenoshi got the message. Haruto had no taste for empty compliments or exaggerated hospitality. Tenoshi turned his attention to Phaeton and Finks. "It's an impressive setup you have," Phaeton remarked, sampling some of the food before him. "I'm glad you think so. We wanted to honor Meteor Kingdom in a way that you would appreciate," Tenoshi said, relieved to have found more receptive conversationalists. "Your chefs are skilled," Finks added, an ever so slight nod showing his approval. "Thank you. We aim to please." Across the table, Haruto began to eat. Canary nudged a particularly succulent morsel of meat toward him with her fork. "You should try this." As Haruto and his entourage stepped into the palace, servants bustled around to make them comfortable. With an unspoken nod, Haruto led his group to their rooms to freshen up. The atmosphere was charged, not with tension, but with the mutual understanding of the importance of the meeting ahead. Shortly after, King Tenoshi arrived, accompanied by his own retinue. The king had arranged the banquet, an overt attempt to impress Haruto and his group. The table was laid with an array of dishes, each meticulously crafted. It was clear that Kukanyu Kingdom was no longer just interested in Meteor Kingdom's technological prowess and their advanced nen methodologies. Their respect now stemmed from recognizing Meteor Kingdom as a rising power, boasting a cadre of 1,000 hunters, a feat not easily accomplished. "Welcome, King Haruto, to my humble palace," Tenoshi greeted, gesturing toward the banquet. "The pleasure is mine," Haruto replied, taking a seat. Phaeton took the chair on Haruto's right, and Canary seated herself to his left. King Tenoshi sat across from them, his eyes briefly meeting Haruto's before quickly moving to survey the table. You've done quite well for your kingdom, King Haruto. 1,000 hunters pledged to a single ruler is no small feat. Tanoshi leaned in, a feast fitting for a king, don't you think? Tanoshi ventured, trying to gauge Haruto's reaction. Haruto simply nodded at King Tanoshi's words, offering no additional commentary. King Tanoshi got the message. Haruto had no taste for empty compliments or exaggerated hospitality. Tanoshi turned his attention to Phaeton and Finks. It's an impressive setup you have, Phaeton remarked, sampling some of the food before him. I'm glad you think so. We wanted to honor Meteor Kingdom in a way that you would appreciate, Tanoshi said, relieved to have found more receptive conversationalists. Your chefs are skilled, Finks added, an ever so slight nod showing his approval. Thank you. We aim to please. Across the table, Haruto began to eat. Canary nudged a particularly succulent morsel of meat toward him with her fork. You should try this. Haruto glanced at Canary, then at the morsel of meat she had nudged toward him. He took a bite. Thank you, you should also eat, he said softly, cutting a piece for her and extending it on his fork. As she took the bite, her cheeks flushed a shade of red. King Tanoshi observed the exchange, reading the dynamics at play but choosing not to comment. Instead, he shifted the conversation. As the banquet continued, King Tanoshi was keen to steer the conversation toward the alliance between the Meteor Kingdom and Kukanya Kingdom. We are thrilled at the prospects of sharing our natural resources with Meteor Kingdom. Our mountains are rich in precious metals, and our forests teem with rare medicinal herbs. Haruto simply nodded again, allowing Phaeton and Finks to engage with King Tanoshi's remarks. His silence wasn't empty, it was laden with unspoken communication that those around him were well attuned to interpret. There was no need for him to affirm the obvious, that an alliance would be beneficial for both kingdoms. Instead, he chose to focus on the meal, occasionally making eye contact with Canary, who sat beside him. King Tanoshi took the opportunity to shower praises on Phaeton and Finks. Your talents are unparalleled. The Meteor Kingdom must be thriving with minds and abilities like yours. Phaeton glanced at Haruto before responding. We are simply fulfilling our roles, just as everyone else in our kingdom. Modesty. Another trait I admire in the people of Meteor Kingdom, Tanoshi continued, still seeking to gain favor. Finks simply nodded, acknowledging the compliment but not giving it more weight than it deserved. He continued to eat, signaling his indifference to unnecessary flattery. Without missing a beat, Phaeton and Finks took up the conversation, skillfully discussing the potential trade routes and benefits. Haruto merely continued his meal, his face a portrait of serenity and control, but not disengagement. If anyone paid close attention, they would notice his ear subtly attuned to the ongoing discussion, even as he kept his own counsel. With the banquet ended, Haruto retreated to his room, silently followed by Phaeton and Canary. Each individual knew the importance of rest and reflection, especially when considering the matters discussed during the evening. Entering his chamber, Haruto found it even more decorated, a reflection of the kingdom's attempt to honor his stature. He approached a table where several documents were neatly spread. Picking one up, he glanced at it before placing it back in its original spot. Satisfied that everything was in order, he dismissed Phaeton and Canary. Rest well, he said simply. His words were not commands but acknowledgments of the role each played in the unfolding events. Phaeton nodded in agreement. See you in the morning, he said before exiting the room. Haruto then looked at Canary, who was already heading for the door. You should also get some rest, Canary. I will, she said, her eyes meeting his for just a moment. It was a quiet exchange, but it conveyed years of trust and shared ambition. Haruto moved to the balcony and looked out over the kingdom. He was not mesmerized by its beauty or scale, rather, he saw a world that had yet to realize its place in his grand vision. He stood there for a few moments, the night breeze brushing against his face, unshaken and resolute. Finally, he moved to his bed. The sheets were fine, made from fabrics that were likely considered luxurious by most standards. Haruto lay down, resting his arms behind his head as he stared at the ceiling until sleep wrapped him to her embrace. Chapter 86. While Haruto and his entourage were airborne, returning to the Meteor Kingdom, Shanark found himself in a different sort of high-pressure environment. He was in the central command room of Meteor Kingdom's broadcasting facility, overseeing the live stream of the Hunter exam. The operation was groundbreaking, a blend of their state-of-the-art technology and refined NEN techniques. "Server load is at 92%, one technician called out. "Route more traffic to auxiliary servers 5 and 6, Shanark directed, his eyes scanning multiple screens that displayed analytics, server statuses, and the ongoing Hunter exam itself. His demeanor was calm, a steady hand amid a whirlwind of activity. Another team member chimed in, feedback from international audiences is pouring in. They're astonished by the difficulty of our Hunter exam. Good. Make sure to note all significant social media hashtags and discussions. We'll analyze them later for public sentiment, Shanark ordered, without looking away from his screens. His phone buzzed. A message displayed, Haruto and team are en route back to Meteor Kingdom. Shanark read the message but didn't react. He was too absorbed in his current mission, which was, in its own way, as important as any diplomatic venture. He understood the stakes. This broadcast was not just about entertainment, it was a declaration to the world about Meteor Kingdom's power, capabilities, and untapped potential. As the Hunter exam reached its final stage, the viewer count soared even higher. We just broke the global streaming record, a technician announced, almost in disbelief. Shanark smiled, acknowledging the moment. Excellent. Ensure we capture this data. It'll be useful for future initiatives. The implications of this broadcast were multi-layered. First, Meteor Kingdom was now irrevocably etched in global consciousness. This was important for a nation that had so much to offer, especially in tourism, one of the most direct ways to infuse foreign capital into the local economy. Second, the rigorous Hunter exam served as an unwitting advertisement for the kingdom's prowess. Look at them, Shanark thought as he watched the candidates navigate the perilous tasks. They're struggling with tests that hundreds from our kingdom have passed. The world was watching, and they couldn't help but draw the obvious conclusion, Meteor Kingdom was a nation of formidable talents. Suddenly, the red alarm for server capacity started flashing. We're at 98% capacity. We may lose the connection if we cross 100%. Activate the NEN-infused backup servers. Shift 20% of the load, Shanark decided immediately, fully aware that Meteor Kingdom's blend of technology and NEN would provide a solution no other nation could even dream of. As the technicians executed his orders, Shanark felt a sense of fulfillment. Everything was falling into place. Soon, Haruto would return and hear of their success, and Shanark knew that their leader would understand its significance, not as a mere technical achievement but as a strategic victory in the invisible wars of perception and influence. The final moments of the Hunter exam were broadcast without a hitch, and as the credits rolled, Shanark finally leaned back in his chair. Good work, everyone, he said, looking around at his exhausted but satisfied team. A technician turned to him. We pulled it off. Think King Haruto will be pleased? Shanark thought for a moment before answering. He will see it for what it is, an essential step toward manifesting the destiny of Meteor Kingdom. And for that, he'll not just be pleased, he will be ready for what comes next. One of the technicians, still trying to catch his breath after the frenzy of the last few hours, couldn't help but ask Shanark, why was this broadcast so important? We had a massive viewership, but we didn't accept any advertising offers, and it was free. It seems like we gained nothing but spent tons of resources. Shanark leaned forward, making sure to hold the room's attention. Let me put it this way, he began, imagine a stage where every major actor wants to perform. By successfully hosting this Hunter exam, we've not only built the stage, but we've shown that we own it. The technician scratched his head, so it's about showing off our capabilities? Shanark shook his head, not just showing off. It's a calculated maneuver in a much bigger game. Today, millions of eyes were on us, evaluating not just the participants but the sheer mastery involved in running the event at this scale. It's soft power, It adds to our reputation without the need for grandstanding. Our silence will scream volumes. But why not monetize it then? Another technician chimed in. Monetizing would have diluted the message. We're not desperate for financial gain from this event, that's not the resource we're after. We're building a brand, a narrative, an image. When the Meteor Kingdom is discussed in international councils, or when we negotiate trade deals, the underlying perception of our capabilities will shift the balance in our favor. Those are the moments where the real dividends of today's event will pay off. A young staffer hesitated before asking, so, it's like a chess game, and this broadcast was just us moving our pawn forward? Shanark smiled, not a pawn, more like unveiling our queen. And just like in chess, controlling the board is often more valuable than the pieces you take. Another question popped up, but what about the internal viewers? Our citizens also watched the broadcast? Shanark paused to find the right words. Our citizens will see this as a display of national pride, a moment of collective achievement. It solidifies the identity of the Meteor Kingdom as a powerful entity, capable of great things. That's a resource far more valuable than any monetary profit. You make it sound almost patriotic, a technician observed. In a way, it is, Shanark confirmed, but it's also an extension of King Haruto's vision. We're not simply looking inward, we're setting the stage for global impact. If you understand the king's ethos, you'll realize he's positioning Meteor Kingdom as a force to be reckoned with. Chapter 87. The room went silent for a moment, absorbing Shanark's explanation. These were not the sorts of insights they usually considered in their daily duties. It gave them a renewed sense of purpose, reminding them that their roles, however technical, were intertwined with the complex web of national and international strategy. Breaking the silence, Shanark looked around and said, "Remember, every byte transmitted, every camera angle chosen, every lag-free second of the live stream, contributes to how Meteor Kingdom is perceived, both inside and outside our borders. In the grand scheme of things, perception shapes reality. That's how empires are built." Shanark then explained, changing the opinions of the masses isn't like flipping a switch. It's a long, laborious process. You have to give them something to believe in, something tangible that aligns with their own worldviews, hopes, or fears. And then you have to reinforce it over time. "You mean like brainwashing?" one technician asked, half-jokingly. "No, not brainwashing. It's about narrative crafting," Shanark elaborated. "When people around the world tune into our broadcast, they're not just passive spectators. They're forming judgments. Every pixel we broadcast plays a role in shaping those judgments." "So we're in the business of opinion manipulation?" "We're in the business of storytelling," Shanark corrected. "Today we've told a compelling story of the Meteor Kingdom, one that captivates imaginations and sets the stage for future interactions. We've made people question their preconceived notions, and that's the first step toward changing them." A young staffer piped up, "But how can we be sure it worked? How do we know their opinions have actually changed?" The beautiful thing about data is that it doesn't lie," Shanark pointed at the screens displaying viewer analytics and social media trends. "See those numbers? The spike in positive sentiments? The hashtags gaining traction? We monitor those, and we adapt. It's a feedback loop. And each time the loop completes a cycle, we're one step closer to redefining how the Meteor Kingdom is perceived." "But does King Haruto care about such things? I mean, he's above such concerns, isn't he?" questioned another technician. Shanark chuckled. "King Haruto understands the game far better than most. His presence alone exudes an aura that makes people follow him, but he knows that to move forward, the kingdom needs more than just his innate qualities. He's keen on harnessing every tool at our disposal, whether it's hard power like military force or soft power like today's broadcast." Another staffer spoke up, "So what comes next? What's the next chapter in this story we're telling?" "That's for King Haruto to decide. But rest assured, we've given him a more powerful narrative to wield. Whatever his next move is, It will be made on a stage we helped build, in a theater where the audience is now inclined to cheer for him. Isn't that dangerous? The young staffer questioned. You know, wielding that much influence? All power is a double-edged sword, Shanark responded thoughtfully. But it's far better to have it and know how to use it responsibly than to be powerless. As they digested this, another alert flashed across the main screen. King Haruto has landed. Shanark looked around the room. Gentlemen, you've been part of something bigger today. Something that isn't just about bytes and bandwidth, but about the future of Meteor Kingdom. A technician, clearly moved by Shanark's words, asked, "Do you think we did enough to make a difference?" Shanark leaned back. We've started the conversation, shifted the narrative, and that's no small feat. Our success today isn't an end, it's a beginning. If we've done our job right, it won't just be King Haruto who's ready for what comes next, the whole world will be. As they pondered this, Shanark's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Haruto. Well done, Shanark. Shanark glanced at the message and then at his team. The king acknowledges our efforts. Be proud, we've accomplished something monumental today. Feeling the weight of their achievement, the room filled with an air of quiet satisfaction. They'd not just managed a live stream, they'd played a role in the intricate, ongoing ballet of nation building and global politics. It was a good day's work, a critical chapter in the still unfolding story of Meteor Kingdom. As you all know, Shanark continued, in this modern age, the battles aren't just fought with swords and guns. The screens you see in front of you, these are the battlegrounds of the 21st century. And today, we've won a significant battle. As Shanark stepped into the throne room, the atmosphere was tinged with a gravity that demanded attention, yet it was Haruto, seated on his throne, who silently commanded the room. Shanark, he greeted, how are you doing? I am well, Your Highness, thank you for asking. And you? As ever, Haruto replied, a slight nod acknowledging the monumental efforts behind the day's event. Your report, please. Shanark began. The broadcast of the Hunter exam was a resounding success, drawing unprecedented viewership. Not just locally but globally, creating a ripple effect in how Meteor Kingdom is perceived. The technical team performed excellently, we had zero downtime, and our security protocols were impenetrable. Finks leaned forward. The international reaction? Overwhelmingly positive, Shanark continued. Our performance today adds credibility to any future negotiations we engage in. Phaeton, eyes narrow but engaged, cut in, and what of the internal perception? Our people? Unified and proud, Shanark emphasized. We have managed to cultivate a stronger sense of national identity, one that aligns perfectly with your broader strategy, Your Highness. Yuvogin grunted, all this talk about perception. What about actual power? Tangible assets? Haruto answered before Shanark could, tangible assets are limited if they cannot be correctly perceived. Today's event broadens the scope of how our military force and infrastructure might be assessed. Kurtopi, the Minister of Technology and Innovation, chimed in, I have to say, the technology held up spectacularly, Shanark. It proves that we can handle large-scale operations. Exactly, Shanark said. We didn't just tell a story, we showed that we have the technological prowess to back it up. Chapter 88. Haruto turned his gaze towards Nobunaga. How were the fairs and online market? You were excited about the prospect of broadcasting the Hunter exam and selling Meteor Kingdom specialties in foreign countries. Nobunaga leaned forward, looking engaged but not overeager. Your Highness, the initiative has been successful beyond our expectations. Not only did the fairs draw immense crowds, especially with the broadcast of the Hunter exam in the background, but the online markets also saw a surge in traffic. And the exports? Haruto inquired, his eyes steady. Very promising, Nobunaga continued. Since the broadcast, there's been a significant uptick in orders for our special commodities, artisan crafts, rare herbs, and exotic goods. Our domestic producers are thrilled, they can barely keep up with the demand. Finks leaned back and raised an eyebrow. So, We've managed to capitalize on the international spotlight. Exactly, Nobunaga nodded. The world was watching us today, and we seized the opportunity. They now see us not just as an exotic, far-off land but also as a nation of valuable products and skills. It opens doors for trade partnerships that were difficult to secure before. Haruto considered this, his face giving away nothing but seeming pleased. This aligns well with the narrative we're building. The more economically entangled other countries become with Meteor Kingdom, the more difficult it becomes for them to oppose us. Indeed, Nobunaga agreed. And with this new revenue, we'll have additional resources to invest in whatever initiatives you see fit, Your Highness. Haruto nodded, taking in the reports from his council as if fitting puzzle pieces into a grander scheme. Well done, Nobunaga. Your efforts have added another layer to our strategy. Thank you, Your Highness. I look forward to the unfolding of the larger plan. Yuvagin grunted. Money and products are good, but let's not forget we can't trade our way to the top. Other kinds of power matter. Naturally, Haruto replied, cutting through the tension like a knife through butter. But today we're discussing our new gains. And in this domain, Nobunaga's efforts have brought us tangible results. The room fell silent for a moment. Haruto's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it and then returned his attention to the council. Haruto turned towards Kurtopi. What is the process with shipbuilding? Kurtopi leaned forward, recognizing the gravity of the question. Your Highness, the construction of the fleet is progressing well. The scale is massive, we're talking about ships capable of carrying hundreds of thousands of people. Of course, the project is multifaceted and will take a few more years to complete. Haruto nodded. And the technology we'll implement? Advanced, both for navigation and habitation. We're not just building ships, we're constructing floating cities with state-of-the-art facilities, Kurtopi added. Haruto considered this. Any potential obstacles? Kurtopi hesitated for a moment. Resource allocation and human capital are our main concerns. The scale demands an immense amount of both. We're mitigating these issues by advancing our automation technologies and sourcing materials strategically. 1. Good. We'll discuss reallocating necessary resources, Haruto concluded. Let's ensure that no corners are cut. As you command, Kurtopi acknowledged. Rest assured, we'll deploy only the best technologies, ensuring durability and resilience. This fleet will be a testament to Meteor Kingdom's ambitions and capabilities. Haruto glanced at Kurtopi, his expression unchanging but carrying an unmistakable acknowledgement. Very well, make sure to keep me updated. Kurtopi nodded. Certainly, Your Highness. A moment of silence settled over the room. Haruto's phone buzzed quietly. He gave it a fleeting glance, then refocused on the council. We've won a battle today, but the war continues, Haruto said, breaking the quiet. Every one of you contributes to the strategy in your own way, beyond the narrow confines of your titles. Always remember, we are building a narrative, a nation, and, ultimately, a new world order. Nods rippled around the room, the air felt thick with commitment. As you were, Haruto said, standing up, signaling the meeting's end. Everyone stood up, a practiced motion but one that never felt routine given what was at stake. As they filed out, Haruto's gaze lingered on the complex tapestry they were weaving, one individual thread at a time. As the room emptied, Haruto took a moment to review the day's reports on his phone. Everything was falling into place, not as pieces of a puzzle, but as elements in an equation he'd long been solving in his mind. And today, that equation felt one step closer to completion. Following the council meeting, Haruto made his way to Komugi's chamber. As he pushed the door open, he found her, as he often did, engrossed in a game of Gunji. Since the day Komugi's Nen had been unintentionally awakened, her Gunji game had undergone a transformation. It was as if the board spoke to her, and every move danced with possibilities that only she could see. Haruto watched for a moment, appreciating the sight. Even he, with all his abilities and strategies, found himself outmatched every time he challenged her. The world might not have known it yet, but to Haruto, Komugi was the undefeated champion of Gunji. Komugi sensed his presence, tilting her head slightly. "Is that you, Supreme King?" she asked, without lifting her gaze from the board. "It is," he replied, his voice steady. His feet glided soundlessly across the floor as he approached her. "Playing alone?" She gave a faint smile. "Practicing. But you know, it's not as thrilling without an opponent." Haruto took a seat opposite her, signaling his readiness for a match. "Care for a game, then?" Komugi's fingers hovered momentarily over her pieces. "With you? Always." Their games always carried a rhythmic cadence, Komugi's delicate fingers moving her pieces with a graceful precision, and Haruto, with a calm deliberation that spoke of his deep-rooted confidence. Every move, every decision was a silent dance between them. After several moves, Haruto's brow creased, noticing Komugi's choice. She was initiating with a beginner's gambit, one he had countered countless times before. In any regular match, he'd have dismissed it immediately, but this was Komugi. There was always more than met the eye with her. Instead of reverting to his tried-and-tested counters, he paused, studying the board, attempting to discern her hidden intent. "Why this move?" he murmured, more to himself than her. She remained silent, waiting. He carefully placed his next piece, choosing a response that was not an obvious counter but an invitation to reveal her strategy. As the game progressed, Haruto's realization dawned, that naive opening had morphed, under her touch, into an intricate and near impenetrable stratagem. It was as if she had reshaped a basic clay pot into a work of art. "You did it again," Haruto said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Turning simplicity into strategy." Komugi's fingers hesitated over the board for a moment. She gave a sheepish grin. "You know, I always think of myself as that move. Plain. Overlooked. But then, things changed for me. I became different. Maybe those simple moves deserve a chance too, like I did." Haruto studied her for a moment. There was something profoundly touching about her words. A stark contrast to his own worldview, but he respected it. Everyone and everything has potential. It's a matter of how it's harnessed, he mused. Komugi chuckled softly. "I just play, you know? But when I play, it's like the board tells me things. Things about the pieces, things about, well, life. Silly, I know." "It's not," he responded gently, placing another piece. "Your insight, your connection to the game, it's unique." She tilted her head, as if listening to a far-off melody. "You think so? I mean, back home, they always said I was good for nothing. Just some blind trash." "Whoever said that was blind themselves," Haruto replied, his tone carrying an uncharacteristic softness. "Inability to see your worth doesn't define you. It defines them." Komugi smiled, a bright, innocent smile. "That's sweet, Supreme King. You always have a way of making me feel special." "You are special, Komugi." The two continued their game, each move laden with meaning and unspoken words. Every piece they placed became a testament to their unique bond, a dance of strategy, respect, and a deep-seated understanding of one another. Chapter 89. The next day, Haruto was seated upon his throne, his gaze seemingly fixed on nothingness. However, Canary, entering with a retinue of maids carrying breakfast trays, knew better. His mind was likely traversing paths of contemplation regarding the realm's future or perhaps even pondering realms beyond their understanding. As maids arranged the trays, his gaze remained unfaltering, unwavering. Once the maids withdrew, Canary approached him, her gaze scrutinizing his pupils, checking for signs of the phase of introspection he was in. They were still, indicating a lighter phase of reflection. Reassured, she murmured softly, "Haruto, it's time for breakfast." His pupils shifted focus, settling on Canary. "Thank you, Canary," he acknowledged, rising from his contemplative pose. Canary shadowed him, assisting in serving his plate. Haruto pulled out the adjoining chair, a silent gesture. "Join me," he instructed, his voice gentle. A faint blush tinged Canary's cheeks, but she acquiesced with a nod. As the morning air permeated the room, Haruto reached for a piece of bread, carefully applying butter and jam with measured grace. Meanwhile, Canary attended to his plate, precisely sectioning each component of his breakfast into manageable portions. "Canary," he spoke softly as he handed her the prepared bread, "you always cut them just the way I prefer." Her face bloomed with a quiet smile, accepting the bread. "And you always spread the jam just right." "Thank you, Haruto." The room echoed with a symphony of clinking cutlery and soft murmurs as they continued their meal, each attentive to the other. Canary paused, her eyes flitting back to Haruto. "The pair who accompanied Killua have begun their training in Nen," she disclosed, delicately cutting through her meal. "Koshiro seems quite impressed with the one sporting green hair." She glanced up tentatively, seeking confirmation in Haruto's eyes. "You sensed something as well, didn't you?" A light sparkled in her eyes as she smiled faintly, her intuitions validated. Haruto inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her observations. "He's not entirely human, that one," he remarked, his gaze steady on Canary. "Perhaps he is part human and part some form of magical beast unknown to us. Possibly an alternate evolution of humans." Canary's eyes gleamed with a mix of curiosity and surprise, absorbing his words. "An evolutionary branch we haven't encountered?" she probed gently, her eyes fixed on his, seeking more insight. "Yes," he affirmed, cutting through his meal with graceful precision. "His energy. It's untamed, raw." Canary furrowed her brow, her voice filled with curiosity as she asked, "But how is that even possible?" Haruto met her gaze with a serene smile, replying, "Well, in that place, anything goes." Canary knew exactly what that place referred to. It was their intended destination, a realm brimming with mystery and inhabited by enigmatic beings. A different evolutionary path for Homo erectus? In their limitless, fantastical world, such things were entirely within the realm of possibility. Canary let her mind wander, captivated by the wonders of their world. Haruto had once taken her to see the colossal world tree, its towering branches seemingly reaching the heavens. "And can you believe," Haruto had remarked, "this tree is just a baby, held back by its own nourishment, unable to reach its full potential?" In a universe where infant trees touched the sky, the idea of an alternative human evolution felt far less far-fetched. An alternative path of evolution? Canary pondered aloud, her eyes filled with unspoken questions. In a world where young trees kiss the clouds, that concept sounds more like reality than fiction. Haruto nodded, his agreement subtle but unmistakable, his gaze fixed on horizons beyond their understanding. "Exactly. His energy resonates with untamed potential, an unrefined essence. It's as if he's a mix of human and something else, something we haven't even begun to grasp." "A magical creature, perhaps?" Canary suggested, her tone a mix of intrigue and wonder. "Maybe an entity we've yet to encounter, something unseen and undiscovered?" "It's certainly a possibility," he conceded, his eyes reflecting the infinite mysteries of their world. "This world is filled with countless secrets, countless unexplored paths, all waiting to be uncovered, waiting to be understood." Then, as though a thought newly crystallized in her mind, she turned to Haruto. "And our voyage?" Her inquiry lingered in the air, unfinished, yet he grasped its essence instantly. "That," he replied, his gaze remaining intense and contemplative, "is precisely what occupied my thoughts as you entered." He paused, his eyes seeking hers, delving deeper into the layers of the unknown. For decades, explorers have ventured into those lands, most returning empty-handed. If they return at all, it raises questions. Were those deemed casualties truly victims of the wild terrain, or were they perhaps the aftermath of guardians defending their territories? He leaned back, his gaze seemingly piercing the space between them, exploring unseen territories, uncharted realms. "If there is an alternate human evolution out there," his voice carried a subtle undercurrent of thoughtful inquiry, "are they civilized? Have they developed societal structures, advanced knowledge?" In the ensuing silence, Haruto's voice emerged once more, disrupting the tranquil atmosphere. "From my observations, this young lad doesn't strike me as particularly brilliant in an intellectual sense. He appears to rely on his intuition and instincts, almost like a creature of pure, unwavering instinct, he shared, with a thoughtful undertone. He paused to savor a sip of his tea, letting the flavors meld as he contemplated further. Considering the terrains we're planning to traverse, it's as if he's perfectly attuned to such environments. It raises an intriguing notion that this particular branch of humanity may have traded some of their intellectual prowess for more primal attributes that align with their surroundings. Another sip of tea, and his mind continued to churn with the warmth of the liquid. The boy's progenitor, on the other hand, seems to possess a disposition quite unlike his offspring. Insights from Shanark suggest a mind that may rival Periston's in terms of depth and calculation. Canary listened intently, her eyes gleaming with fascination and wonder as she absorbed his analytical deductions, weaving a complex tapestry from what seemed like nothing solid. Haruto's fingers interlocked, resting atop the table, a sign of his deep contemplation. He broke the momentary silence. "Inform Koshiro," he began, "to closely observe this young one's relationship with Killua. There's a dynamic between them that I find intriguing." Canary tilted her head inquisitively, seeking clarity. "How so?" He met her gaze with a thoughtful expression. "From what I can see, he's incredibly loyal. When he forms a bond, it seems unbreakable. And if anyone threatens those he cares about, his reaction, I believe, would be primal, almost instinctual." Canary's eyebrows rose slightly. "A bond stronger than just friendship?" He nodded, a small smile forming. "More like the bond one shares with a beloved pet. A loyalty that goes beyond reason or logic. It's raw, instinctive, and sometimes unpredictable." A look of realization crossed Canary's face. So, if Killua is ever in danger, he would tap into his hidden potential. Haruto finished her thought, acting on impulse and emotion. His current strength may not be apparent, but there's immense potential within him, perhaps even surpassing Killua's prodigious abilities. She was silent for a moment, processing this insight. "That's rather intriguing." Haruto offered a wry smile. "Indeed, intriguing. If the region we plan to explore is home to individuals like him, our expedition could be more challenging and enlightening than we thought." Taking a deep breath, Canary nodded. "I'll relay your observations to Koshiro right away." "As you should," Haruto affirmed, watching her gracefully rise from her chair. His gaze followed her until she disappeared from his view, and then he delved back into his thoughts once more. Considering the uncharted territories ahead, Haruto found himself reflecting on the young, energetic boy. If this boy represented the people of that region, they needed to be prepared. The boy might seem unassuming now, but his hidden potential was undeniable. It was potential that could potentially surpass even Killua's remarkable abilities. A subtle furrow creased his brow as Haruto lost himself in contemplation. A world where the underdog could rise to challenge the established order, where loyalty could eclipse reason, and where untapped potential could disrupt the status quo. Chapter 90. Haruto sat just outside the operation room, his foot tapping rhythmically against the floor. The sounds of medical equipment beeping and whirring around him were a constant reminder of Komugi's ongoing procedure. The air was filled with anticipation as Komugi, after a long time living in the kingdom, was finally on the verge of being cured of her blindness. Canary shared the tense air with him. The mood was palpable, their eyes showing waves of hope and worry, mixing and creating a silent symphony of shared emotion. It had been some time since Komugi arrived in the kingdom. Haruto, while trying to suppress his feelings, had always been haunted by the sight of her living in darkness. Yet, he had an overarching plan. For years, he meticulously worked on melding the miracles of advanced technology with the esoteric capabilities of Nen. He was waiting, biding his time for the perfect fusion of these two worlds. And just recently, there had been a groundbreaking revelation. When Haruto first learned of technology's potential to heal, he knew it could change lives. Yet, technology alone had its limitations. Nen, the mystical energy manipulated by skilled users, could harness this technology to perform feats beyond any doctor's wildest dreams. First came the blending of medical diagnostics with the insightful healer's gaze. Through the advanced diagnostic equipment, they could peer into the human body with unprecedented clarity. Yet, combining this with the Nen ability allowed a healer to not just see but also understand the hidden ailments, sensing anomalies that no machine could detect. As researchers pored over medical data and sought to develop new medicines, the elixir alchemist's vision came into play. This Nen ability empowered its users to craft personalized medicines by manipulating molecular structures, further magnified by state-of-the-art labs and AI-driven drug discovery platforms. The surgical interventions were no less revolutionary. With precision surgeon's hand, robotic systems and laser technology became tools that the Nen users wielded with unimaginable precision, ensuring the safety and well-being of every patient. Canary, sensing Haruto's internal conflict, whispered, "She will be fine." This combination of Nen and tech is unbeatable. Haruto simply nodded, his emotions manifesting in the subtle clench of his fist, betraying his concern. Post-operative care was enhanced with the Guardian Healer's Watch. With smart hospital beds and advanced wound care technologies, patients experienced rapid healing. Meanwhile, rehabilitation saw a new dawn with restorative Mender's Touch, where Nen users could optimize the body's healing in conjunction with VR-based physical therapy tools and advanced prosthetics. Mental health care, a once neglected realm, was transformed as well. Soul Soother's Whisper gave Nen users the ability to reach into a person's deepest emotional realms, magnified by AI-driven therapy tools and immersive VR environments. Haruto's vision for public health was truly visionary. The Protector's Shield of Vitality combined with vast public health databases ensured proactive responses to health threats. Emergency response saw emergency savers dash, ensuring that Nen users could respond in the blink of an eye, using advanced life support systems and telemedicine for remote critical care. And for those needing long-term care, Companion Keeper's Embrace was a true godsend, providing unmatched comfort and support, magnified by smart home care technologies. Lastly, training the next generation of healers was transformed by Medic Mentor's Flow, where the sharing of knowledge and skills was seamlessly transferred through medical simulation technologies and e-learning platforms. As Kamugi's procedure reached its final stages, Haruto's regal presence remained unshaken, but those who knew him could see the storm of emotions beneath. He had masterfully intertwined technology and Nen, seeking to bring a new dawn of healing to his kingdom, all while trying to heal one very special individual. Soon the operation room was opened, and a medical Nen master, donned in scrubs, walked out, her footsteps echoing in the tense silence. She approached Haruto and, bending her knees slightly in a bow, was halted by Haruto's gentle gesture. "No need," he said, his voice a tranquil undercurrent in the tense air. "How did it go?" The doctor's features softened into a smile, the dim light catching the relief in her eyes. "It went well, very well. Kamugi is asleep, but when she awakens, she will embark on a journey of healing. We expect her to regain her sight within a week." A whisper of hope fluttered through the silent symphony of emotions that filled the room. Canary looked at Haruto, her eyes a complex dance of concern and burgeoning joy. Haruto's eyes, usually a well of calm reserve, showed a flicker of relief. "Tell me about her post-op care," he inquired, maintaining his composed demeanor. The medical Nen master nodded. "She will be under the Guardian Healer's watch. The advanced monitoring systems and continuous care will ensure her rapid healing." "And her rehabilitation?" Haruto probed further. The doctor's eyes gleamed with assurance. "The restorative Mender's Touch in combination with our advanced physical therapy tools will optimize her body's healing. We anticipate a smooth recovery." Canary's voice, soft yet laced with underlying excitement, pierced the air. "So, she will finally see the world around her?" "Yes, she will," the doctor confirmed, her voice a blend of professional assurance and genuine happiness. Haruto, his eyes the twin mirrors of the storming emotions within, turned his gaze toward the operation room. "Ensure that she receives the best care." The medical Nen master bowed slightly. "Of course, Your Highness." We will employ every tool and ability at our disposal to ensure her well-being." After the doctor excused herself, Haruto turned on his heel, his stride purposeful. Canary, caught off guard, hurried to match his pace. "Aren't you going to see her?" "No need." Haruto's words were succinct, his voice steady. Canary's lips curled into a knowing smile. His actions spoke louder than his words. A sweetness lurked beneath his stoic exterior, endearing him to those who truly knew him. He was a shield, his concern concealed but ever present. Matching his stride, she joined him as they walked towards the palace. As they exited the hospital, Maki fell into step with them. "Hey," she greeted succinctly. Haruto acknowledged her with a nod. "Anything?" "I checked, everything is secure. No worries." Maki, the royal physician, was the head of the hospital, yet her skills were not apt for Komugi's operation. Nonetheless, she had been meticulously overseeing every step to avert any mishap. Chapter 91. Haruto's walk continued, unperturbed, Maki aligning her steps on his other side. To many, Komugi was renowned as the unparalleled Gunji player that the ambitious Haruto aspired to defeat. However, Canary's discerning eyes sensed an undercurrent of something deeper, something neither of them could put into words. She knew Haruto in ways others didn't, and if she were to make a guess, even he wasn't fully aware of why Komugi held such a special place in his heart. For now, Canary didn't push, she believed that some mysteries resolved themselves with time. As Canary thought, Haruto himself couldn't pinpoint the exact reason behind the depth of his feelings for Komugi. However, he knew that he wanted to be near her, to protect her. This unfamiliar surge of emotion had been growing, making him reflect upon himself more intently. Zeno's recent arrival at the palace had been one of the triggers. An inexplicable wave of resentment had surged within Haruto upon their first meeting. Yet, in an unexpected turn of events, Zeno became part of Haruto's council. The very presence of Komugi had always stirred something deep within him. From the very first glance, an unexplainable connection was felt. Then there was the indomitable Netero, whose mere presence sent alarms ringing in Haruto's mind. He couldn't decipher why he felt that Netero might rob him of something precious. Adding to the complexity of emotions that hung in the air were Canary's own burgeoning feelings for Haruto. There had been fleeting moments, close encounters that were either self-interrupted or disrupted by unforeseen circumstances. In her heart, Canary knew that Haruto meant more to her than just a brother. Initially, she felt unworthy of his attention, content with being a sisterly figure. However, his recent conversation with her changed her perspective. He asked her to be free, to be more than just a guardian. He recognized her as Canary, his canary. Canary walked beside Haruto, observing his interactions, watching the way his authority naturally flowed from him. There were no flamboyant displays, just an aura of subtle command that made it clear he was to be respected and followed. This made her feelings grow more profound, her connection to him more personal. Arriving at the throne room, Haruto took his seat, his back straight and eyes calm but penetrating. Canary, standing by his side, shared a fleeting glance with him, her stance protective yet reserved. Maki sat across from him, her eyes assessing, noting every detail of the people in the room. A little later, Miluki's Oldic walked in, breathing heavily, with Killua smirking beside him. The smirk disappeared as they both bowed in front of Haruto. "Your Highness." Haruto nodded, his gaze steady on them. "Miluki, did you figure it out?" Miluki mumbled, seemingly avoiding the question. "Speak freely," Haruto ordered, his tone leaving no room for disobedience, making the heavy teen rigid. "Your Highness, I am certain about how the game works but some details still elude me. I need multiple game stations to see how it works." Haruto leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. "Why haven't you done it already?" Miluki sighed. "Your Highness, the copies are almost impossible to find. I've searched wide and far. Money is not the issue, availability is." Maki leaned forward, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you talking about Greed Island?" Miluki's eyes brightened. "Maki-sama, you know about it?" "I had an interest in the game, but it was difficult to find. I used some connections to research it. There's a big auction in York New City soon, several games will be auctioned there. She locked her eyes with Haruto's. Haruto took a moment, then nodded decisively, get them. Maki rose from her seat, legally? A dead stare was Haruto's response, and she chuckled in return, fine. Maki then pondered, who should I take with myself? Her eyes lit up as she looked at Haruto. Why don't you come with me? It is a big event where you can meet people of high standing. You can also do some shopping. Haruto opened his mouth, ready to decline, but his gaze shifted, landing on Canary. Her eyes seemed to dance with the prospect of the trip. Fine, he said. Keep the team small. We don't need many people for this trip. Maki nodded as she walked out. Will do, Your Highness. Once she left, the room was enveloped in a tense silence. Miluki glanced at Killua then to Haruto. I am certain the game is in the real world like you said, Your Highness. Why don't we find the island? To this, Haruto shook his head. I want to discover the Nen used to create such a big operation. The island doesn't intrigue me, nor the game. His eyes were unwavering, revealing his unwavering determination to grasp the elusive. Miluki nodded, accepting that Haruto's vision was different from his own. Your Highness sees beyond what we see. His voice was laced with admiration and curiosity. Killua's eyes sparked with excitement. Can I be in the team to try the game, Your Highness? Gon and I can win the game for you. His words were filled with youthful optimism. Haruto looked at the boy and nodded. Do as you wish. His eyes bore into Killua's, prompting an excited jump from the boy as he left with his brother. Canary, Haruto's voice broke her reverie, prepare for the journey. Her heart skipped a beat. Yes, Haruto. Her voice steady, but her eyes betraying the excitement within. As Canary left, the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to ripple, revealing another figure. Illumi appeared from the concealed darkness, but Haruto could discern that this was merely a clone to deliver a message. Your Highness, the clone knelt, his features neutral. Haruto nodded, his eyes sharp. Report. Illumi raised his head, his words succinct. I infiltrated the Kakan Empire, Your Highness. My reach is currently limited, but I manipulated the concubine of a high-standing minister. The minister, unable to keep his secrets, divulged to the concubine that Kakan Empire is assembling ships for a substantial endeavor. Haruto's eyes, steely and penetrating, fixed on Illumi's clone. Continue. Princes and princesses, all from different mothers, vie for the throne, their rivalry intense and destructive. The details flowed, each word painting a more vivid picture of the volatile political landscape. Look into it, Haruto commanded, his mind racing with the implications of this revelation. The clone nodded, and after a few more exchanged details, disappeared into the shadows. As it left the palace, its features morphed, blending seamlessly into the crowd, undistinguishable and unseen. Chapter 92. 31st of August, the harmonious hum of a private jet echoed as it landed on the runway of a secluded airport in York New City. Haruto, Canary, Maki, and Kurtopi disembarked, footsteps synchronizing with the fluttering heartbeats, as York New's atmosphere embraced them. An envoy from the United States of Sahurta approached, their postures rigid, their gazes set on Haruto, shadows of respect etched on their faces. Welcome to York New City, Your Highness, greeted the lead envoy, his head bowed in deference. Haruto nodded, his aura palpable. Thank you for your hospitality. Lead the way. The envoys herded them to a luxurious palace designated for their stay. The majestic surroundings spoke of the relevance the president held for Haruto. Your Highness, everything has been arranged per your liking. Should there be anything unsatisfactory, we shall see it amended, the envoy informed, glancing surreptitiously at Haruto, gauging his reaction. His gaze and Nen swept over the place meticulously, subtle edges of his aura alert and probing, scrutinizing the surroundings for anything that might be amiss. The ambience, though refined, concealed nothing of note, allowing Haruto to stride forward, his steps echoing in the vast hall as the sea of servants and maids bowed in unison. The Republic's president had no authority equivalent to a king, a fact Haruto was rather grateful for, particularly considering King Tanoshi's unwarranted offerings of courtesans, a gesture he had found utterly displeasing. Canary, with her habitual meticulousness, was the first to step into Haruto's room. Her gaze flickered across every shadow and corner, searching for hidden devices or potential threats. When her silent vigil uncovered no lurking danger, she nodded to Haruto, allowing him entry. Haruto then turned to Maki and Kurtopi, his voice unwavering, "Rest well." His words were followed by a pair of silent nods as they retired for the night. The envoy emerged again, presenting a tablet, the calendar displayed highlighted with patches of green and red. "Your Highness," he said with a hint of trepidation, "President John Hayden implores your attendance for a meeting. Kindly mark any green hour per your availability." Haruto's eyes skimmed over the tablet, a subtle air of contemplation about him. "I shall meet President Hayden at the third green hour tomorrow," he declared, his tone resolute yet thoughtful. A quiet "understood, Your Highness" was the envoy's reply, the resonance of respect palpable in his voice. 2. As the envoy retreated, a fleeting interaction transpired between Haruto and Canary. Her eyes, a mix of concern and curiosity, met his. "Are you not resting, Haruto?" Her voice carried a soft, protective undertone. Haruto shook his head, his gaze unfocused, lost in the spectral dance of the night. "I don't feel particularly sleepy." The inherent capability of Nen practitioners allowed them to channel their internal energies to alleviate daily needs. Haruto, with this technique, could prolong his wakefulness for a month with only a trace of discomfort wafting through him. Nevertheless, he maintained a pattern of sleeping more than 5 hours every day, a semblance of normalcy to placate Canary's fretful thoughts. Noticing his contemplative posture near the window, Canary approached, her footsteps whispering secrets to the air. Haruto shifted, a silent invitation rippling in the movement, and patted the space next to him. A blush blossomed on Canary's cheeks as she acceded, immersing herself in the celestial symphony above. The sky, a canvas splattered with ethereal glints, unfolded its myriad stories before them. Their souls danced in the silence, words unspoken yet understood, as the stars played their eternal symphony. The ambience, bathed in moonlight, cradled their mutual silence, the flickers of unspoken words fluttering in their breaths. "Canary," Haruto's voice broke the tranquil symphony, his words writing the gentle air. His gaze was locked onto the sprawling sky, its radiance a mirror to his subtle ambition. "Yes, Haruto." Her response, a whispered echo, curled around his name, wrapping it in warmth. "Ever wondered about the worlds beyond ours?" His query felt like a brush of wind against her soul, light and filled with an innate curiosity. His regal persona subtly ebbed away, revealing a more genuine facet of his being. She allowed herself a smile, her gaze lost in the celestial dance. "Often. It seems like an infinite waltz of possibilities and mysteries." A thoughtful hum emanated from him, the sound mingling with the nocturnal symphony. Infinite. A concept so boundless, yet here we are, confined to our finite existences. The words felt like echoes of an eternal query, resonating with her own musings. "Do you think," her voice hovered, her gaze meeting his, "we are alone in this boundlessness?" A contemplative silence encased them, the stars whispering their untold tales. "No," Haruto's response, imbued with an untraceable conviction, pierced the silence. "I believe the universe cradles countless lives, entities unknown to us." "Do you want to conquer it?" Canary asked. Her words were like whispers, laced with knowledge of the boy who grew up beside her, of the leader entwined with his destiny. Haruto was not merely ambitious, he was meant to lead, to command respect and submission. From their group to Meteor City, everything and everyone submitted to him, and it seemed the world would soon follow. But Haruto's response was as she expected, his head shaking subtly, the silvery moonlight accentuating his contemplative features. "I want to understand it." A gentle smile played on Canary's lips, revealing the softness etched in her being. Haruto's relentless pursuit of understanding, his insatiable curiosity, was what drew her to him, the tether that held her close. He was no ordinary sovereign, His reign wasn't marked by a thirst for title or wealth or worship, he simply sought to fathom the unknown, to unravel the myriad mysteries the universe veiled. The night, draped in its celestial cloak, witnessed the symphony of silence between them, a dance of words unspoken, a melody of unshared thoughts. The enigma of the universe, the untold tales of the stars were like silent whispers, filling the air around them, making their breaths sync with the rhythm of the unknown. Chapter 93. Canary then asked, as she hugged her knees, the fabric of her dress crinkling softly under her touch, "What do you think is out there, Haruto? Why haven't we seen anything yet so far?" Their proximity caused a gentle warmth to flow between them, his shoulder brushing against hers. He took a moment, his eyes reflecting the distant stars above as he pondered. "We haven't fully understood our own world yet. Think about it, the very existence of Nen is hidden from ordinary people by nations and the Hunter Association. The known world map we see? Just a lake in a vast, unknown terrain. Space, I presume, follows a similar pattern. There might be a council or an unseen leader that shields this world. Or perhaps, it's nature's design." The subtle weight of her head, leaning against his shoulder, caught his attention, but he didn't mind. It felt natural. "Nature's order?" she whispered, her voice tinged with curiosity and exhaustion. His arm, moving almost instinctively, found its way around her, providing her a sense of security and warmth. "Nature has a unique way of protecting her creations," he began, his voice low and comforting. "We might be considered weak in the vast canvas of the universe. There might be a barrier or a protective order that conceals or safeguards us from potential threats. Only when someone from our world grows strong enough, will that barrier shatter. It's nature's way of ensuring balance." He could feel her breathing, slow and steady, and knew she was drifting into sleep. "Yet," he continued, drawing her closer, "think about it. For eons, we've looked at the sky, searching, wondering. Maybe we're protected, kept hidden until we're ready to venture out, or perhaps until someone from the beyond thinks we're worthy enough to approach." His fingers gently stroked her hair, the action soothing for both of them. "But then again, knowing our world and its secrets, would we really be left unguarded?" The silence that followed was peaceful, filled only with the distant chirping of night critters and the soft rustling of the wind. Haruto continued to gaze at the vastness above, pondering their place within it, while Canary, lulled by his voice and the tranquility of the night, nestled closer. Sighing, Haruto softly lifted Canary and brought her to the bed. The celestial glow bathed them in a soft luminescence, turning the contours of their forms into delicate silhouettes. As he tucked her in, her arms hugged him, a whisper emerged, "Huggy, Haruto." His eyes widened momentarily, a tidal wave of childhood memories flooding his senses. Canary would utter the same words when they were small, her toddler self clinging to his 5-year-old form. She had been kidnapped and the nightmares from the ordeal often invaded her slumbers, rendering her unable to find peace without him nearby. He could still remember the slight tremble in her tiny form, the grip of her small hands, and the way she nestled closer to him in search of solace. A gentle smile graced Haruto's features as he, without a word, embraced Canary, burying his nose in her hair. The fragrance of her hair seemed to weave a tapestry of shared moments, of unspoken bonds. Silence wrapped around them like a soothing blanket as Haruto, allowing the edges of sleep to envelop him, drifted off beside her. Canary, now in blissful sleep, wore a serene smile, a silent symphony of contentment playing in her dreams. The moon bathed the sleeping duo in its tender glow, their synchronized breaths whispering tales of silent confessions and gentle camaraderie to the night. This wasn't a domain of spoken words, nor was it a realm of declared feelings, it was a dance of silent understandings, a melody of unuttered affections. Waking up the next day, Canary felt two strong arms holding her waist. She opened her eyes and saw Haruto's face, her cheeks immediately flushing. So flustered, she didn't even know what to do. In panic, she closed her eyes and feigned sleep. She hoped Haruto would get up and leave, allowing her to rise without making things awkward. Yet, as minutes passed, Haruto didn't wake up, or so she thought. Summoning courage, Canary cracked one eye open and found Haruto smiling knowingly at her. Her face deepened into an even darker shade of red. She felt utterly embarrassed. "You can stop pretending, Canary. Sleep is hardly convincing when your pulse betrays you," Haruto whispered. Canary opened both eyes, meeting his gaze. "You were awake?" "Long enough to know you were doing a poor impression of Sleeping Beauty," he replied, his smile never leaving his face. Canary looked away, mumbling, "I just didn't want to make things awkward." "Awkward? Is it awkward for you to be close to me?" She hastily stuttered, "And no, that is not what I mean. I like when you hold me." Realizing her slip, she looked away, adding, "I mean, it was fine." Haruto tilted his head, taking a moment to absorb her words. His fingers lightly grazed her cheek, compelling her to meet his gaze. "You don't have to downplay your feelings, Canary. Saying one thing and meaning another, it's unnecessary." She hesitated, her eyes searching for an adequate response. I didn't mean to. I just..." "You just what?" She sighed, finally gathering her thoughts. "I didn't want to presume that my feelings were reciprocated." He raised an eyebrow, a smile quirking the corner of his lips. "And what would those feelings be, exactly?" Canary felt her face flush a brighter shade of red. "You're not making this any easier, Haruto." He chuckled softly, his grip around her waist tightening ever so slightly. "But I could, if you'd let me." She took a deep breath, leaning her forehead against his. "I like being close to you. It feels natural, like this is where I'm supposed to be. It's both comforting and nerve-wracking at the same time." "Ah, the duality of human emotion," he mused. "So, you're nervous because?" "Because what we have, it's special, and I don't want to ruin it." Haruto's eyes softened. If it's special, why would acknowledging it ruin it? She thought for a moment. Because sometimes putting feelings into words makes them real, and reality can be fragile. He leaned back to look at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Fragility is a part of life, Canary. It's what makes moments precious. The question isn't about avoiding fragility, it's about whether you're willing to embrace it, knowing full well that it comes with risks." Her eyes widened at the depth of his words. "You make it sound so simple." "Do I? It's anything but simple," he said, his voice tinged with a gravity that seemed to pull her even closer. "The real question is, are we brave enough to take the risk?" Before she could reply, a soft knock on the door interrupted them. Haruto lifted his gaze toward the door, his brow furrowing momentarily before he sighed. "I suppose duty calls." He gently extricated himself from the tangle of their limbs and stood up, casting a look back at her as he headed toward the door. "We'll continue this later. Unless you'd prefer to leave it unresolved?" "No," she found herself saying before she could even think, "I'd like to resolve it. Very much so." He nodded, his eyes betraying a hint of pleasure at her response. "Then later, we shall." As Haruto opened the door to greet whoever was on the other side, Canary couldn't help but feel a tingling sensation run down her spine. Haruto was right, they were standing on the edge of something fragile yet incredibly precious. And for the first time, she felt brave enough to embrace the risks that came with it. Maki was on the other side of the door, holding a small envelope. "A message from the council," she said, handing it to Haruto. Haruto took the envelope and glanced briefly at Maki. "How urgent?" "Urgent enough to interrupt your morning," she replied. "Very well," Haruto said, the weight of his responsibilities settling back onto his shoulders. "Let's attend to it." As he closed the door behind him, Canary lay there, thoughts swirling like a tempest. But amid the whirlpool of emotions, one thing remained crystal clear: she was ready to embrace whatever came next, risks and all. Comment. Chapter 94. After a heartfelt conversation with Canary, the duo left to have breakfast in the glorious dining room of the palace given to them by President John Hayden. Haruto led the way, his steps poised and deliberate. As they entered, Maki and Courtopy were already at the table, engrossed in their own conversation. "Good morning," Haruto greeted as he took his seat. Canary followed suit, settling in beside him. "Morning, Maki, Courtopy." Morning, Maki replied, eyes narrowing slightly as she observed the discreet comfort between Haruto and Canary. Courtopy nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. As they began their meal, Haruto effortlessly steered the conversation. I'll be meeting with President Hayden later. We'll be discussing potential alliances and other matters of diplomacy. Maki, Courtopy, I want you both to be prepared for any updates. Understood, Maki said, her tone displaying a trace of curiosity. Do we know what the president is looking for in this alliance? Haruto considered for a moment. Not entirely. But whatever it is, we'll weigh it against our own objectives. His gaze turned to Canary. Canary, you and I will need to review some intelligence files before the meeting. I want to be fully prepared. She caught his eye, her own reflecting a mix of admiration and something more. Absolutely. Just say when. After breakfast, servants cleared the table as the envoy from the previous night arrived promptly. He bowed, then announced, "The car is ready, Your Highness." Haruto nodded, his acknowledgement concise yet gracious. "Thank you. We shall proceed then." Exiting the palace, the quartet made their way to the sleek black car waiting for them, a contrast to the cobblestone pathways and historical architecture around. The driver held the door open as Haruto slid into the car, followed by Canary, Maki, and Courtopy. As the car began its journey, Haruto glanced at the dossier in his hands, flipping through the pages with meticulous care. The vehicle navigated through narrow streets lined with flowering trees and quaint shops. A sense of serenity hung in the air, a stark difference from the gravity of the conversations that were about to occur. They passed over a stone bridge arching over a babbling creek, a painting of pastoral beauty that seemed almost surreal against the backdrop of their current mission. Finally, they pulled up to a building of modern yet stately architecture, adorned with a series of flags representing various nations. "We're here," Haruto observed, not a statement of arrival but an acknowledgement of the task ahead. Exiting the car, they were immediately met by a host of officials and security, all maintaining a deferential distance as if recognizing Haruto's latent air of authority. The group was ushered through a corridor adorned with historic paintings and luxurious furnishings, finally arriving at a conference room. A large wooden table dominated the room, around which plush chairs were arranged. "Please, have a seat," an official gestured, his voice tinged with respect and perhaps a hint of anxiety. Haruto chose a seat at the head of the table, a decision no one questioned. Canary sat to his right, her presence emanating a blend of warmth and steadfastness, while Maki and Courtopy sat across, their eyes keenly observant. President John Hayden entered the room, a congenial smile on his face. "King Haruto, it's a pleasure to meet you. And this must be your delegation?" "Yes," Haruto replied, his tone courteous yet straightforward. "This is Canary, Maki, and Courtopy. We have much to discuss." "Indeed, we do," the president responded, sitting opposite Haruto. Haruto unfolded the dossier in front of him. "We're aware that your government has particular interests. So do we. A mutually beneficial arrangement would suit both parties, don't you agree?" President Hayden nodded. "Absolutely. That's the spirit of diplomacy." "Then let's not waste time," Haruto continued. After lengthy discussions from both sides, Haruto agreed to the terms he gave to King Tenoshi of Kokanya Kingdom. The United States of Saherta would send people to the Meteor Kingdom, where they would be trained in the unique technology and Nen that the Meteor Kingdom had to offer. In exchange, President Hayden promised the richness of his nation and any material Meteor Kingdom would require. As they left the building, the car pulled up and the driver opened the door with a courteous bow. Haruto, Canary, Maki, and Courtopy re-entered the vehicle, its atmosphere saturated with the weight of finalized negotiations and newly formed alliances. Canary leaned close to Haruto, her voice a low whisper. "There's an underground auction tonight. Do you want to participate in it?" Haruto's eyes met Maki's for a brief moment. Her eyes glinted, radiating a quiet excitement. He turned to Canary and nodded. "Excellent," Canary replied, quickly pulling out her phone to arrange their invitations. The car glided through the streets as twilight approached, returning them to the palace. Once inside, they headed to the private meeting room where they could confer. Courtpy glanced at Haruto, concern etched on his young face. Wouldn't it damage your reputation to attend such auctions, Haruto? The latter shook his head, his gaze unwavering. York New City's auctions are famous. Even nation leaders often attend. There are private rooms where you can enter without even being seen. They're really discreet. We can go in and come out without anyone even seeing us. Haruto looked at Maki. Since you showed such interest, do you know what they will auction today? Maki's eyes met his, a flicker of anticipation breaking through her usual composure. They usually deal in regular stolen goods and slaves. But I've heard there's a possibility that an item from that place will be up for auction. Ah, that place, Haruto mused, a slight quirk of an eyebrow revealing his intrigue. Canary, you were eager about this as well? Canary glanced at Haruto, her eyes capturing the soft glow of the chandelier above them. I was. An underground auction like this could give us more than material assets. It offers information, networks, hidden avenues that even diplomacy can't provide. Courtpy, looking puzzled, interrupted, wouldn't something like this pose a risk, though? If word gets out that we're involved in an underground auction. Chapter 95. Courtpy, looking puzzled, interrupted, wouldn't something like this pose a risk, though? If word gets out that we're involved in an underground auction. Haruto waved his hand dismissively, turning his gaze back to his companions. It's fine. Canary, notify President Hayden that we'll be creating a bit of a ruckus tonight to solve his mafia problem. Ask if he has any issue with that. Selling slaves at my age? They're bold. Canary grinned as she pulled out her phone. Bold or foolish, they won't know what hit them. She quickly sent a message and looked back up. Message sent. Maki leaned forward, her eyes shimmering with a barely contained thrill. I've heard the underground in York New City is quite entertaining. Will we be participating actively, or just observing? Haruto met her gaze, and his lips twisted into a half-smile. Oh, we'll be more than spectators. I intend to acquire some valuable assets, material or otherwise. Courtpy frowned, his concern still palpable. Isn't this a departure from your usual diplomatic methods? Sometimes, you need to venture into the gray to understand the full spectrum, Haruto responded, his eyes piercing through any lingering doubt. Canary's phone buzzed at this time. She glanced at the screen and showed the message to Haruto. Hayden's envoy conveyed the president's message. It was carefully worded but clearly conveyed an interest in some sort of collaborative scheme that went beyond mere training. Haruto studied the message with an unreadable expression before speaking. Tell him that we will double the people to train for the same cost. But I am determined to deal with the underground problem myself. He can bend the narrative as he likes later. Canary smiled at the nuance in Haruto's words and typed swiftly. After hitting send, she pocketed her phone and met Haruto's gaze. Done. Your move. Maki leaned back in her chair, scrutinizing Haruto with a careful eye. You don't seem the least bit surprised by President Hayden's hint at a hidden agenda. Why? Leaders rarely offer gifts without expectations of returns, Haruto observed, meeting Maki's gaze squarely. President Hayden is no different. A snake bit with untapped resources, Haruto pointed out, a slight smile playing on his lips. And snakes can be charmed, or killed. The room felt charged, the air pulsing with a collective sense of anticipation and risk. Does everyone have their tasks clear for tonight? Haruto's eyes scanned the faces of his companions. Each nodded, some with excitement and others with a reserved form of acknowledgement. Canary's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and then back at Haruto. President Hayden has no objections. He's intrigued by how we plan to handle the situation. Good, Haruto nodded. We move at dusk. At dusk, the team gathered. Canary had already arranged a vehicle, so Haruto sat in the front passenger seat next to her as she drove. Courtpy and Maki occupied the seats behind them, their presence quiet but palpable. Everything's ready? Haruto asked without turning his head, his eyes locked onto the thick dossier in his lap. Yes, The auction invitations are secure, and the private room has been confirmed, Canary replied, her focus split between the road and the atmosphere within the car. Perfect, Haruto said, finally closing the dossier and looking out the window. The setting sun bathed the city in hues of gold and ember, contrasting sharply with their dark intentions. Before they left the car, they donned masks that were intricately designed to both conceal identity and allude to a sense of mystique. The silk threads woven into the fabric of the masks were so finely spun they seemed to be a part of their faces. Canary ensured her own mask was snug before assisting Haruto with his. The subtle gaze they shared was a silent affirmation, they were ready. Showing a cryptic invitation code on her phone to the masked attendant, Canary secured their entrance. "We have a private room," she said, her voice slightly muffled by the mask but still clear. The attendant nodded, accepting the code without question, then gestured for them to proceed. They entered through a velvet-lined corridor intentionally designed for privacy. Tall barriers obscured the sight lines between different sections of the hallway, ensuring guests would not cross paths. Though gilded chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light was carefully diffused, casting an inviting yet secretive glow on the intricate carpet below. Haruto noticed these details in silence, and a nod was all he gave, appreciating the level of discretion. Maki and Kortopi followed suit, their eyes scanning the surrounding details but remaining silent. At last, they arrived at their room, the door of which bore no number, just an abstract art piece, a form of encrypted identification known only to those who needed to know. Canary entered a quick code into the touchpad beside the door, and they heard the lock disengage. Inside, the room was a marvel of privacy engineering. One-sided glass walls allowed them to see out but prevented any prying eyes from looking in. Acoustic panels on the ceiling and walls guaranteed that their conversations would not leave the room. Haruto stood at the center and looked around, finally breaking the silence. "They've done well in ensuring privacy. Canary, did you manage to get information on the items that will be auctioned?" Canary handed him a tablet. "The list is here. Most are what we'd expect, but there's a particular item that stands out, a Nen artifact." "A Nen artifact?" Maki leaned in, her eyes widening slightly. "Those are rare." Kortopi looked puzzled. "But why would anyone auction something that dangerous? Isn't that a risk?" Haruto chuckled softly. "Risk and reward are two sides of the same coin. Besides, only those knowledgeable in Nen would recognize its value. To others, it's just a trinket." Canary received a notification on her phone and showed it to Haruto. "Our presence has been approved, and we've been granted bidding authority. No limits." Chapter 96. Haruto looked at the list on the tablet, his fingers lightly grazing the screen as he scrolled. The slaves were detailed with cold precision, height, weight, skills, even Nen potential, as if they were artifacts themselves. A wave of disdain surged through him, his jaw tightening. He set the tablet down on a sleek, ebony table at the center of the room. "Distasteful," he said, and nothing more needed to be said. His posture remained calm, an island of self-possession in a world gone awry. He looked at Canary, who knew him well enough to sense the storm within. She nodded, her eyes barely meeting his before shifting away. She understood. "We're not here for that. We have a singular focus," Canary said, her tone steady, despite the darkness that had clouded the room for a moment. "Indeed," Haruto responded, his voice a perfect blend of gravity and assurance. "We should prepare for the auction." The door to the room buzzed softly, indicating the auction was about to start. Haruto motioned for Maki and Kortopi to take their seats. The four of them sat at a high-tech console that provided an augmented reality view of the auction room. Soon, the auctioneer appeared on the screen, a suave man with a golden gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this exclusive event. We have an assortment of rare and valuable items for your perusal. Let us begin." The first item presented was an antique samurai sword, its scabbard adorned with intricate engravings of mythical dragons. Crafted in the 17th century by a master swordsmith, the auctioneer announced, "This sword has an ethereal sharpness, capable of cutting through even the most advanced armor." Haruto looked at the sword and activated Gyo. As he did so, he saw Nen within the blade, but it was faint and crude. Whoever the creator was had probably been a normal human who had awakened Nen through his art. Pity. With proper training only his kingdom offered, he could have crafted awe-inspiring Nen weapons. Nobunaga should like this gift, he remarked softly, then gave Canary a nod. Canary considered the bidding strategy. To go high from the beginning could deter competitors but risk overpaying. A cautious approach might allow others to step in. She knew the atmosphere of the auction could ebb and flow like the tides, and early items usually set the tone. "What do you think? Go aggressive?" she asked, her eyes meeting Haruto's for a moment. Haruto glanced at the screen again, his gaze not lingering on any one thing for too long. "Let's not show our hand too early. Bid conservatively for now." Canary nodded. She knew that Haruto's judgment was often the fulcrum upon which decisions balanced. She tapped on her tablet to place the bid. As they awaited the auctioneer's call, Maki leaned in, intrigued. "That sword carries Nen, doesn't it?" "It does," Haruto confirmed, "though it's primitive. A trinket compared to what we're truly after, but valuable nonetheless." The auctioneer's voice resonated through the room. "The current bid for this samurai sword stands at 200 million jenny. Going once, going twice." "Raise it by 20 million, Haruto instructed, his words barely above a whisper. Canary complied, tapping again on her tablet. The bid went up. Other participants hesitated for a moment. Perhaps they sensed the seriousness behind the new bid. "Sold, for 220 million jenny," the auctioneer announced, his gavel striking the base. A series of items followed, some fascinating, others mundane, ancient manuscripts, jewelry from lost civilizations, and technological wonders whose function no one could easily guess. Throughout, Canary executed the bids, sometimes winning, sometimes withdrawing, all under the barely perceptible cues from Haruto. As Haruto was looking disinterested in the stream of items displayed, a book was suddenly brought forward. It was an unassuming tome, leather-bound with pages that hinted at age. His gaze sharpened as he looked at the book. Activating Gyo, his eyes searched for traces of Nen within the object. Finding none, his excitement did not dampen, instead, it intensified. This book wasn't normal at all. "Maki, rent another private room now. Buy that book without drawing any attention," Haruto ordered. Maki rose without a moment's delay and left the room. She knew well that when Haruto was serious, immediate compliance was the best course of action. Kortopi looked puzzled as he watched her exit. "Is the book a treasure?" he asked. Haruto nodded, his eyes still fixed on the auction screen. "It is." Kortopi tilted his head slightly. "Why another room, though? We could just buy it here, no?" Haruto shook his head, his eyes not leaving the book as the bidding started. "If we bid on a seemingly normal book, others may suspect we see something they don't. The price would soar. And since we secured the sword, they know we're after rarities. We must avoid drawing attention." Canary watched the back and forths on the screen as Haruto spoke. She glanced at him. "Clever," she said, her tone steady and tinged with admiration. As the auction continued, Haruto leaned back slightly, allowing Canary to handle the minor adjustments in their bids. His attention remained keen, the room's technology enabling him to see the subtleties of each auction item without the mask of a projected image. The auctioneer brought forward the book Maki had been instructed to obtain. The leather-bound tome was displayed under soft light, emphasizing its time-worn pages and the beauty of its understated craftsmanship. An ancient manuscript dating back to the Heian period. A rather plain item, I must say, the auctioneer noted, a flicker of amusement on his face. For the discerning collector, perhaps? The starting bid is a mere 5 million jenny. Haruto watched as bids came and went, a series of numbers flashing across the screen. The fact that the item garnered little interest wasn't lost on him. He glanced at Canary, who was also monitoring the bids. Any activity on Maki's end? Canary checked her tablet briefly. She has successfully placed a bid, and it's holding 10 million jenny. Excellent, Haruto said, his voice maintaining its tranquility. He trusted Maki to handle the task without drawing undue attention. Finally, the book was sold. For 10 million jenny, a treasure for someone out there, I'm sure, the auctioneer commented, setting down his gavel. Chapter 97. The auctioneer continued with a slew of items of varying degrees of rarity. Haruto noticed a pattern. As expected, the grandeur of the items had started to wane, a strategic move to make the early items seem more desirable. The auctioneer brought out a new set of items, his voice gaining a tone of secretive enthusiasm. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present a series of stolen artifacts, acquired through other means. Highly coveted, these items speak volumes of history, art, and the dark recesses of human desires. The first item appeared on the screen, an ornate chalice adorned with sapphires and rubies. Handcrafted in the 16th century, believed to be part of the collection of a prominent religious institution. Its value is unmatched. Canary glanced at Haruto. His focus was unwavering, as if the items were a mere footnote. He gave her a slight nod, and she proceeded to place a token bid, fully aware that this was not what they were truly after. Next came a painting, its canvas filled with swirling colors and abstract shapes. Said to be a lost masterpiece from a revered 20th-century artist, missing for decades, the auctioneer boasted. Haruto's fingers barely moved, his eyes still fixed on the screen. He signaled Canary with a barely perceptible gesture. She understood and abstained from bidding this time. The parade continued, a watch once worn by a world-renowned physicist, a feathered headdress believed to have belonged to a Native American chief, and a manuscript penned by a philosopher whose name was whispered in academic circles. Soon, the auctioneer's demeanor shifted subtly. And now, we arrive at our penultimate item for today, a genuine Nen artifact. The auctioneer lifted a cloth to unveil the penultimate item, an ornate amulet, its metalwork intricate, and at its center, a pulsating gem. This artifact is imbued with genuine Nen powers. It's believed to have originated from an ancient civilization lost to the sands of time. Haruto's gaze narrowed. He activated Gyo again, this time focusing on the amulet. A vivid aura emanated from it, signaling not just Nen, but an advanced form of it. Maki, Haruto said, rejoin us immediately. Maki, receiving the message on her own device, made her way back with urgency. The starting bid for this rare Nen artifact is 1 billion jenny, the auctioneer announced, his voice tinged with anticipation. Haruto glanced at Canary, who was also scrutinizing the artifact through her own understanding of Nen. Their eyes met for a moment, and Haruto nodded almost imperceptibly. Bid 2 billion, he whispered, turning his gaze back to the screen. Canary, trusting Haruto's judgment, complied. The number flashed on the screen, and a hushed murmur emanated from the other participants, audible even through the soundproof walls. Maki re-entered the room just as the auctioneer's voice filled the air. 2 billion jenny. Do we have a higher bid? Haruto sensed her arrival but didn't divert his attention. Sit down, Maki. This is what we came for. Maki swiftly took her seat, her eyes darting to the screen. She sensed the tension but remained quiet. Going once, going twice, the auctioneer's voice trailed as another bid appeared on the screen, 2.5 billion jenny. Raise it to 3, Haruto commanded. Canary executed the new bid. The room waited in tense silence. Sold for 3 billion jenny. The auctioneer's gavel struck, and the room sighed, some in relief, others in disappointment. Canary looked at Haruto, searching for some clue to his emotions. He seemed unaltered, his posture as composed as ever. The item is ours, she stated simply. It's just the beginning, Haruto said, his voice carrying a gravity that didn't need underscoring. It was finally time for the final item. The auctioneer gestured to a cloth-covered pedestal beside him. As the cloth was lifted, the audience saw a flower carefully sealed inside a glass terrarium. The flower appeared almost ethereal, a chimeric fusion of luminescence and shadow. Its petals radiated colors that seemed to change as one gazed upon it, shifting hues of cobalt, emerald, and a deep shade of magenta that defied description. But at its core, an inky darkness swirled as if it were a portal to another dimension. Ah, yes, ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to the pièce de résistance. This rare flower comes from the Dark Continent itself, the auctioneer began, his voice tinged with a mix of reverence and excitement. For those who need a reminder, the Dark Continent is a place of untold danger and immeasurable treasure, an open secret among us that's veiled from the common world. Canary leaned in toward Haruto, her eyes flashing momentarily. I've never seen anything like this. Not even the Zoldyck had something so otherworldly. Haruto did not look away from the terrarium. His eyes were fixed, scrutinizing every intricate detail of the flower as if reading a complex script. Maki, Kortopi, what do you make of it? Maki leaned closer, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed the flower. It's like it's alive, but not in the way we understand life. It's as if it exists in more than 3 dimensions. Kortop, usually reserved and taciturn, murmured, it's like the flower is a key to something unfathomable. Starting bid for this transcendental item is 5 billion jenny, the auctioneer's voice cut through the room's awestruck hush. Start with 6, Haruto whispered. Canary, understanding the stakes and trusting Haruto's judgment implicitly, increased their bid to 6 billion. The number illuminated the screen, followed by another round of incredulous whispers. 6 billion, my friends. Do we hear a higher bid? As the room's collective breath seemed to halt, another bid materialized on the screen, 6.5 billion jenny. 7, Haruto's voice was quiet but firm. Canary raised their bid to 7 billion jenny. Again, the room waited, the tension palpable. Going once, going twice. A sudden, unanticipated surge of energy filled the room. The bidding screen flickered and then displayed a new number, 8 billion jenny. Haruto's eyes narrowed further. For a fleeting moment, his composed facade almost slipped, but he regained control instantaneously. 9, he said, his voice colder now, a barely perceptible edge of challenge lurking beneath. The room froze as Canary entered the new bid. An electric charge of expectancy hung in the air. 9 billion jenny. Going once, going twice. Sold for, Chapter 98. Wait. A voice rang out from one of the adjacent rooms, cutting off the auctioneer. This is absurd. Are we to be puppets, strings pulled by that one bidder? Another voice chimed in, more incensed. I second that. It's ludicrous. The auction house must be in cahoots with whoever's in that room, deliberately driving up the prices. A cacophony erupted, filling the room with indignant murmurs and accusations aimed at both the auction house and Haruto's mysterious bidding room. The auctioneer raised his hands in an attempt to regain control. Ladies and gentlemen, I assure you. Assurances mean nothing. A particularly irate voice cut in. What's to stop us from walking out and leaving you with unsold merchandise? Haruto remained unruffled amid the growing chaos. Maki, Canary, prepare for our exit. We won't leave empty-handed. Maki caught the seriousness in Haruto's eyes and nodded, sliding her hand into her coat pocket. Canary was already reaching for her phone. Haruto leaned toward the mic, his voice emanating from the speakers and overriding the clamor. I suggest those who cannot compete to withdraw. This auction was never a playground for the faint-hearted. His words were met with an uneasy silence, a quiet so profound it felt like the calm eye of a storm. Then someone scoffed, followed by laughter and a smattering of applause from various rooms. The auctioneer sighed in relief. Very well. We stand at 9 billion jenny. Going once, going twice. The screen stayed stagnant, everyone holding their breaths. Sold for 9 billion jenny. The auctioneer's gavel came down, a sense of finality enveloping the room. The team in Haruto's room shared a loaded glance. Canary looked at him, her face a blend of triumph and question. We have the flower, Haruto stated, each word heavy with unspoken implications. And the amulet, Maki added, her voice tinged with a newfound respect. As the gavel landed, people in the auction house started to get restless. Murmurs and disapproving glances filled the room, even as the attendees in the other private rooms began to voice their displeasure. "Is this some sort of game to him?" said one man, the apparent leader of a thuggish group, adorned with tattoos and piercings. An elegantly dressed mafia boss chimed in, "Our time and money aren't playthings." Tycoons in slick suits huddled together. "We should all meet later. Whoever secured that flower will not walk out of this building." Amid the tension, the auctioneer tried to refocus the crowd's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the last items of our auction today, slaves." He unveiled a group of desolate figures, shackled and downtrodden. "Ah, what a find! Probably the last slaves from Meteor City, now known as Meteor Kingdom," he said, glee thinly veiling the darkness of his words. The moment the auctioneer uttered Meteor Kingdom, Haruto's visage tightened ever so slightly. His home. He had paid for the items as they were the property of individual sellers lent to the auction house. But these slaves, they were another matter entirely. As grumblings escalated, some attendees threatened the workers to reveal Haruto's identity. "If you won't reveal who he is, we will," shouted a livid mafia underboss. Then, something unimaginable occurred. With a flick of his hand, Haruto disengaged the one-sided glass that concealed them, unveiling the room. The crowd's attention was arrested completely. "Call all the 10 dons here now," Haruto commanded, his voice reverberating throughout the hall. "I, the king of Meteor Kingdom, give you half an hour." As soon as Haruto uttered those words, a silence so profound it felt like the world had paused befell the auction house. Most attendees couldn't fathom the king of the newly created Meteor Kingdom being in an underground auction. Others, however, recognized him instantly. His green hair, those violet eyes, this was indeed the king of Meteor Kingdom. The tycoons, mafia bosses, and thugs who had been openly hostile moments ago were now swallowing hard. Had they just threatened a king? The auctioneer looked like he'd forgotten how to form words, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He had just gleefully announced that the slaves on display were the last from Haruto's kingdom. The workers in the auction house felt the urgency in Haruto's tone. A few among them rushed to notify the 10 dons. "Canary, Maki, Cortopi, stand by. Things are about to get interesting," Haruto whispered. Canary and Maki exchanged glances, their eyes filled with understanding, while Cortopi maintained his stoic expression. A door at the back of the auction house opened and 10 individuals entered the hall. Their collective presence could be felt even from a distance, but none so much as Haruto's. "We are the 10 dons," one among them announced. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Seated majestically upon his throne, Haruto remained silent, an inscrutable expression on his face. Canary, his trusted emissary, stepped forward to address the assembly of 10 dons, the criminal overlords who ran the abhorrent auction houses. Distinguished representatives, and, most especially, the leaders who harbored the unforgivable practice of enslaving Meteor Kingdom citizens. I stand before you as the emissary of King Haruto, the sovereign ruler of the Meteor Kingdom. Let it be known that our nation has emerged as a legitimate force on the international political table. We are a nation reborn, reshaped under the wise and just rule of our king, and the old laws that once left our citizens vulnerable are no more. King Haruto has formally decreed that all citizens of the Meteor Kingdom, regardless of where they may be in the world, are under the unequivocal protection of our sovereign state. Our borders are not just lines on a map but a sphere of influence that extends to each and every one of our people. To mistreat a citizen of Meteor Kingdom is to scorn our land, our government, and our king. The era of silence and complacency is over. From this moment forward, know that any act of aggression, any form of enslavement, any harm directed towards our citizens will be viewed as an act against the Meteor Kingdom itself. Such actions will incur the full wrath of our power, military and otherwise. Organizations, states, and individuals who unjustly threaten the citizens of this kingdom, consider this your final warning. If you persist in these heinous activities, you will find yourselves facing the unyielding justice of King Haruto. Your economy will falter under the weight of our sanctions, your secrets will unravel under the scrutiny of our intelligence, and if need be, your lands will tremble under the might of our armies. Do not underestimate our resolve. Do not mistake our civility for weakness. The Meteor Kingdom, under King Haruto, will not suffer the degradation of its people any longer. Amend your ways, cease your abhorrent practices, and perhaps you will be spared from the storm that is coming. Chapter 99. With Canary's each word, the 10 Dons sweated. How could they not recognize the speech that had reverberated throughout the world? When the Meteor Kingdom first released this warning, all the other countries had laughed, but soon their laughter turned into incredulous silence. Meteor Kingdom had risen so rapidly, becoming a powerhouse in technology and Nen, a secret few knew, and consolidated their power. No one dared to even harbor the thought of crossing this kingdom. The 10 Dons knew it too, but far away from the kingdom, in the shadows, they ran their businesses, hoping they wouldn't be noticed. Canary stepped back, giving a respectful nod to Haruto before rejoining him. He did not speak, but his eyes swept over the assembly, capturing each individual in an unspoken understanding of their new reality. "What say you, 10 Dons?" Canary finally broke the silence, the weight of her question hanging in the air. Nothing. What could they say? They were caught red-handed. Haruto tilted his head, the movement a simple and yet all-encompassing gesture that carried the weight of an unspoken verdict. "Underground of York New City, you are no more." Canary, Maki, and Cortopi moved at the same time, their actions fluid like clockwork. Haruto watched them, his gaze a tacit seal of approval on their ensuing activities. Shadow beasts, the Nen masters committed to protect the 10 Dons, materialized out of the thin air, but their presence was as futile as a candle's flame in a storm. Canary vanished into the shadows, emerging next to Leech, her blade singing a song of retribution. His eyes widened, the swarm of leeches he summoned dissipating into oblivion. Before he could even grasp the weight of his mistake, Canary's blade had already punctuated the end of his life. She stepped back, her figure blending into the darkness once more. Maki's needles glittered under the dim light as they found their way into Owl's and Worm's vital points. They froze, their Nen abilities rendered useless as the needles manipulated their aura channels. Maki pulled the threads tied to her needles, and in a grotesque display of her mastery over Nen, Owl and Worm crumbled to the ground, lifeless. Cortopi, whose stoic demeanor rarely faltered, charged. His fists were his narrative, each blow a sentence, each contact an exclamation point. Porcupine, Rabbit Dog, and Hedgehog could barely muster their Nen abilities before they were met with Cortopi's brute force. Their powers, once frightening and unyielding, now looked like childish tricks before his unspoken might. Fish tried to create a pool of dread but found himself drowning in it as Maki's needles sealed his fate. Bat attempted to envelop the area in darkness, but Canary appeared out of nowhere, her blade slashing through the veil and ending Bat's life. Frog's attempts to consume Cortopi's essence were futile. Cortopi broke free, turning Frog's void of oblivion into his own tomb. The remaining shadow beasts, Mule, and Hedgehog, tried to bolster their Nen defenses. Mule's strength, which could usually withstand the fiercest of storms, was nothing before Haruto's unyielding aura. A simple flick of Haruto's wrist, and Mule was down, his mountain of strength reduced to a molehill. The once entrenched and unassailable power structure of York New City's underworld had been annihilated in a matter of minutes. Haruto finally stood up, stepping down from his throne. No words were needed as he walked past the lifeless bodies of the shadow beasts, his mere passage through the room an unspoken testament to his authority and dominion. He reached the 10 Dons who were now quivering, their facades shattered, their underworld empire in ruins. "What say you, 10 Dons?" Canary finally broke the silence, but this time her words were almost redundant. Their very existence was the answer. Haruto looked at them, his eyes locking onto each one's. They couldn't meet his gaze, their eyes shifting away. "Thought so." Haruto's words were soft, almost a whisper, but they carried an irrevocable judgment. "Your reign ends here." Turning away, Haruto walked back to his throne. Canary, Maki, and Cortopi joined him, Their actions having spoken volumes, their loyalties evident. "You can dismantle this pitiful establishment," Haruto commanded, his voice not rising, but every syllable filled with an irrefutable finality. "The Meteor Kingdom has spoken." As he said so, the army of the United States of Suherta stormed the underground, their entrance marked by the immediate presence of Nen masters from the Hunter Association. Haruto had already foreseen this, allowing President Haydn the freedom to bend the narrative as he saw fit. His objective had been clear, to send a message. He had no care for stealing the spotlight. Haydn could have it, it made no difference to him. With the serene grace of an unfolding lotus, Haruto turned and began walking towards the exit. Canary, Maki, and Cortopi followed suit, their movements synchronized yet distinct, each a compliment to Haruto's tacit authority. Cameras flashed, capturing this historic moment, but Haruto's focus wasn't on the lenses aimed at him. Instead, his gaze fell on Canary for just a moment, and in that unspoken exchange, an entire universe of understanding unfolded. The Hunter Association's Nen masters began detaining the Tendons and their subordinates, but Haruto and his group walked by, seemingly oblivious yet deeply aware. As Haruto and his group returned to the palace provided by President Haydn, Canary relayed updates on the international stage. "The Kakan Empire has labeled your actions as impulsive, deeming you a child king. Some nations, however, have voiced their support," Canary informed. Haruto merely nodded, eyes closed. "And the citizens of Meteor Kingdom? They're appearing worldwide, free from their shackles," she continued. Haruto opened his eyes. "Good, that's as it should be." The palace's interior was a display of modern opulence, a far cry from the dark underbelly they had just purged. As they entered, the four settled into the plush seating area. Haruto took his place at the center, Maki, Cortopi, and Canary naturally took their positions around him, like planets revolving around their sun. "I have to say," Maki began, "the reaction from the Kakan Empire is bold, especially considering their own dealings." Haruto smiled ever so faintly. "Insecurity often manifests as loud judgment. We have little to worry about." "And what if they attempt to move against us?" Cortopi asked, his voice ever so neutral, yet tinged with underlying curiosity. Haruto looked at him. "They won't, and if they do, they'll learn why it's a mistake." Canary's eyes met Haruto's for a fleeting moment. He didn't need to say anything, her knowing glance told him she understood. Turning to Canary, he said, "Arrange a conference call with the allied nations. I want them to hear from me directly. Oh, and get the lawyers started on drafting economic sanctions against all countries still holding our citizens." "Understood," Canary replied, before pausing and adding, "Haruto." As she turned to leave, Haruto called out, "Canary, have dinner with me tonight." The slight blush that brushed Canary's cheeks was something no one else in the room could understand, nor was it meant for them to. "Yes, Haruto," she managed, her tone professional but unable to mask the underlying emotion. Cortopi and Maki exchanged glances, recognizing the palpable change in the room's energy. Chapter 100. The night found Haruto in his room dressing for his dinner date with Canary. Warm amber light filtered through the ornate chandelier, casting a gentle glow on the meticulously laid-out ensemble. A crisp white shirt, tailored trousers, a sleek black blazer, the suit was a testament to fine craftsmanship, each thread woven with precision and elegance. Haruto's green hair framed his face, contrasting starkly with the pristine white shirt he buttoned up. His deft fingers moved systematically, making quick work of each button, leaving the top one open. His collar, devoid of a tie, offered a glimpse of his collarbone, hinting at the strength beneath the fabric. The door opened silently, revealing Maki. Her eyes took in the sight before her, Haruto, the epitome of elegance and authority, standing amid a room bathed in gold hues. "You've always had a striking figure," Maki remarked, her tone carrying a mix of admiration and familiarity, the words a simple acknowledgement of the truth. "That suit enhances it." Haruto turned, his violet eyes meeting hers. "Thank you, Maki. It's a special occasion." Maki approached, her eyes scanning him critically, looking for any inconsistencies or misalignments in his attire. "May I?" she asked, indicating a slightly skewed lapel. Haruto nodded, standing still as Maki adjusted the blazer, ensuring it draped perfectly. The air was filled with a comfortable silence, a testament to their bond and understanding. "There," Maki said, stepping back and examining her handiwork. "Perfect?" Haruto studied himself in the full-length mirror, noting the way the suit accentuated his broad shoulders and slender waist. "I must admit, the tailor did an impressive job." Maki smirked. "Well, when you're dressing the king of Meteor Kingdom, second best won't do." A slight upturn appeared on Haruto's lips, a fleeting, yet genuine smile. "Your assessment always matters, Maki." She met his gaze, a hint of amusement twinkling in her eyes. "Then my assessment is that Canary won't be able to take her eyes off you." The room was thick with unsaid words and histories interwoven over years. Haruto's response was a soft chuckle, a rare sound from him. "I can only hope." "Is there anything else you need?" Maki inquired, her eyes once again scanning Haruto's figure for any other adjustments. He met her gaze. "No. But thank you, Maki." She nodded, taking a moment longer than necessary to meet his gaze. "Enjoy your evening, Haruto." With those parting words, she stepped out, leaving Haruto to his thoughts. The room returned to its muted glow, the only sound the gentle rustle of fabric as Haruto made his final preparations. A few minutes later, the door opened again, revealing Canary. Her gaze traveled from Haruto's feet, slowly working its way up, until her eyes locked onto his. The slight flush on her cheeks spoke louder than any words. "Shall we?" Haruto asked, extending his arm. Canary nodded, looping her arm through his. "We shall." As they stepped outside, a sleek limo awaited, gleaming under the city lights. But it was Canary who captured Haruto's attention. Canary's curly dark purple hair cascaded down her back, creating a vivid contrast against her dark skin. The dress she wore was a deep shade of burgundy, hugging her silhouette gracefully and flowing out at the hem. It brought out the deep, almost mystical quality of her large gray eyes. Those eyes, so often focused and determined, now held a different light, a blend of excitement and slight nervousness. "You look beautiful, Canary," Haruto remarked, his voice genuinely appreciative. She smiled, the twinkle in her eyes making her whole face glow. "Thank you, Haruto. You are, as always, quite the sight yourself." Haruto grinned, a rarity in itself. He extended his arm, which Canary graciously accepted. The two made their way to the limo, the driver opening the door for them. As Canary slid in, the soft fabric of her dress shimmered under the muted lights of the limo's interior. Once settled inside, the limo began its journey towards one of the city's most renowned skyscrapers, home to the elite Celestial Plateau restaurant. The city lights zipped by, creating a mesmerizing blur, but inside the limo, the world seemed to slow. It was just them, two souls amidst the vast city, en route to an evening that promised to be memorable. "Are you excited?" Haruto asked, breaking the silence. Canary looked at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "It's not every day you get to dine at a Celestial Plateau. But more than that, it's the company that makes it special." The limo pulled up to the skyscraper's entrance. The greeter, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, recognized Haruto immediately and nodded respectfully. "Welcome, King Haruto, Ms. Canary. It's an honor to have you both at the Celestial Plateau tonight." "Thank you," Haruto replied, his tone courteous yet authoritative. Inside, the restaurant was a testament to luxury and elegance. Tall glass windows provided a panoramic view of the glittering city below. The ambient lighting created an intimate atmosphere, and soft instrumental music played in the background. A maitre d' led them to a private section overlooking the city, the table set for two, adorned with crystal glassware and fine porcelain. "Your table, Your Highness," he said, pulling out a chair for Canary. "Thank you," Canary replied, taking her seat. Once they were settled, a sommelier approached. "A special bottle for this evening, on the house," he announced, presenting a vintage wine. The wine was decanted gracefully, the rich aroma wafting through the air as the sommelier poured the liquid into their glasses. Haruto swirled his glass gently, admiring the wine's deep ruby hue before taking a tentative sip. Canary followed suit, her eyes momentarily closing to savor the flavors. "Not bad," Haruto mused, taking another sip. Canary nodded in agreement. "One of the finest I've tasted. They certainly know how to impress their guests here." As the night progressed, Haruto and Canary delved into various topics, their discussions reflecting their unique status and the world they inhabited. The gentle clink of their cutlery accompanied their conversation, adding a rhythm to the evening. "I heard the V5 is planning a summit next month in Padokia," Canary said, referring to the 5 major world powers. "They want to address the increased presence of rogue nen users along their borders." Haruto considered this. It's a growing concern. Many are flocking to the allure of power without understanding the responsibilities and dangers associated with nen. The first course arrived, a delicate foie gras terrine, garnished with a truffle reduction. Haruto tasted it, nodding appreciatively at the rich flavors. Their meal progressed, and they enjoyed a range of gourmet dishes, from steamed grouper with ginger-infused sauce to succulent cuts of Asian beef, seasoned to perfection. The two spoke of nations, trade deals, and the latest whispers in the underworld, topics befitting their status, yet their conversation remained fluid and intimate. Dessert was served, a masterful assembly of textures and flavors, a delicate sorbet of golden gossamer fruit, renowned in the European continent for its fleeting seasonal presence, paired with a rich custard made from Meteor Valley milk. "This reminds me," Canary began, a glint of mirth in her eyes, "of the time you had Phaeton and Finks scale the European cliffs for a single gossamer fruit, only to find it wasn't the right season." Haruto smirked, recalling the memory. "A youthful whim. I think they've yet to forgive me for that escapade." Canary chuckled. They endured quite the journey, but the tales they returned with, priceless. Haruto took a spoonful of the dessert, savoring the exquisite blend. A testament to the adage that sometimes, it's the journey and not the destination. Canary nodded, intriguing how some lessons come from the most unexpected quarters.